Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame Le Greffier.
Monsieur le Sénateur Farnham. Monsieur le Sénateur Gorse.
Présent.
Monsieur le Sénateur McLean.
Présent.
Madame le Sénateur Lehegara. Monsieur le Sénateur Binet. Madame le Sénateur Miles. Madame le Sénateur Miller.
Présente.
Monsieur le Sénateur Boliak. Madame le Sénateur Kirsten. Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Marie. Madame le Connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Brelard.
Présent.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Hélia. Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Madame le Connétable de la Trinité.
Présente.
Monsieur le Connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Laurent. Madame le Député Labbé.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Tadier. Madame le Député Dublé. Madame le Député Alves. Monsieur le Député Morel.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Voisin.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Andrews. Madame le Député Binet. Monsieur le Député Coles. Monsieur le Député Curtis. Madame le Député Curtis. Madame le Député Falcon.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le Député Jeune. Madame le Député Poré.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Renouf. Madame le Député Stevenson.
Présente.
Madame le Député Ward.
Présente.
Madame le Député Wilson.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Carpenter.
Présent.
Madame le Député Gleave.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Leck. Madame le Député Lee.
Présente.
Madame le Député Maltman.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Parker.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Raimondo.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Rebendane. Monsieur le Député Romero.
Monsieur le Doyen.
Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi les gouvernements et la puissance de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussis au bien-être et au soulagement du peuple, qu'il te plut de commettre à leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous amène point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal, car à toi est le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Monsieur le Sénateur Farnham.
Présent.
Monsieur le Sénateur Binet. Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Marie.
Présent.
Madame le Député Dublé.
Défaut.
Madame le Député Alves.
Présente.
Madame le Député Binet.
Présente.
Les États sont constitués. We return to the appointment of ministers And the next matter is selection of the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Senator Farnham, would you like to make your nomination for this post?
Yes, sir, Senator. Deputy, not yet, Deputy Gerald Voisin has previously served in the Assembly, sir, and served as President of the Economic Development Committee between 2002 and 2005, sir. I'm very pleased to nominate him for the role of Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Are there any other nominations? Yes, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to nominate Deputy Tadier. Deputy Tadier has served as the Chair of the Economic and International Affairs Committee and, in my view, has a sound understanding of the economic agenda ahead of us.
Is the nomination seconded? Sir, happy to second nomination. Thank you very much. Are there any other nominations? No? Well, as we have two nominations, as members will know, the procedure is now for Deputy Tadier to withdraw from the chamber for the period of the speech and questions to Deputy Voisin, and I invite him to do so. Thank you very much. So, Deputy Voisin, you now have 10 minutes to make a speech to members, followed by up to 20 minutes of questions. Deputy Voisin.
Thank you, sir. And I'd like to thank Senator Farnham for putting his confidence in me, and I hope that I can convince the rest of the Assembly to also put their confidence in me. So I could spend my 10 minutes talking about how we need to support our financial services industry by delivering on the Time to Win programme, talk about the importance of our visitor economy and how we need to support it, and the positive impact that it has on our society. I could talk about the importance of our air and sea links and how we need to look again at the ferry service agreement. All these are important issues and do need attention. But what I am compelled to speak about today is our whole island economy, that each and every industry sector. According to Statistics Jersey, our island economy has seen virtually zero economic growth since 2000. As a result of this, since 2001, our real average earnings have increased by zero. The point is that economic growth matters. The biggest factor for islanders feeling under financial pressure, not having any money left at the end of the month, is that the economy hasn't grown and average earnings haven't increased by more than inflation. Taxes have increased over the last 20 years, but not earnings. This is why islanders feel worse off, because many are, and this is why the electorate is so fed up with us in the Assembly. The key issue at the last election was the cost of living in Jersey and the need to make our island more affordable. If we had achieved just half the average earnings increase that was achieved in the 1990s over the last 20 years, then the real median average wage would be £7,000 more than it is today. Let me put that in basic language. Our failure in here has cost people out there £7,000 a year. Economic growth matters. We owe it to islanders to grow our economy for a more prosperous future for everyone. We need to allow our people to earn a pay rise. Now, it's easy to say, let us grow the economy, but it's much more difficult to achieve, and many countries in the EU are struggling with the same problem. However, we have many strengths to build upon. We are politically stable. We have a respected legal system, sound-ish public finances, internationally recognized financial services, and a skilled workforce. Building upon this, my strategic vision for Jersey's economy is one where we are innovative, competitive, we encourage entrepreneurs, and we are outward-looking to build an export-based economy to supplement our local economy. It is likely these exports will be based on knowledge services and creativity, that are enabled through technology and exported via our excellent connections to the rest of the world. To achieve this, we must change the framework and rules within which our businesses operate, and I will be working with the new Minister for Planning and Regulation to speed up decision-making and delivery, remove barriers and controls, many of which have already been identified, and I want to work with industry sectors to identify further barriers and blockages. I promise not to repeat the mistakes of past economic development ministers both in Jersey and Europe and draw up ambitious plans on the premise that they are in charge of the economy. They are not. It is the business leaders and entrepreneurs that drive an economy, create growth, diversification, not governments. This is particularly important today as we're on the cusp of the next industrial revolution, where the pace of technological change means that learning has become a lifelong necessity, not an optional extra. Artificial intelligence, automation, and digital transformation will reshape our economy and many jobs, surprisingly quickly. Some roles will disappear, many more will change, and entirely new careers will emerge that don't exist today. We cannot foresee the extent that our economy will change, nor what the winners and losers will be. This is why we need our economy to be flexible and able to more easily adapt to change. Our responsibility is not to fear or resist change. Our responsibility is to prepare our workforce to succeed within it. That means investing in digital skills. I was interested to see that Skills Jersey had been transferred out of economic development, and I believe there is a case to bring it back, although I was pleased to hear the comments of the Education Minister on developing skills. I see an enormous task in retraining our people to use artificial intelligence as a tool to improve productivity and remain relevant in a competitive market. Often those in government don't understand that our economy is about people. People making decisions about whether to participate or not, whether to invest or not, whether to lend or not. These decisions are influenced by the way that government behaves. Do we encourage? Do we give entrepreneurs confidence? Are we pro-growth? Unfortunately, this key element has been missing for several years now as we have over-regulated and tried to control. We have been acting in a manner that drains confidence from businesses and entrepreneurs in Jersey and those seeking to come here. This must change. We need to re-establish the trust that must exist between businesses and government that will allow confidence to grow and investment to flow. My job as your Minister for Economic Development is to build on this confidence and to create the environment for businesses to flourish, for entrepreneurs to see opportunity rather than risk. To create this environment, in addition to the Minister for Planning and Regulation, I will be working closely with the Minister for Social Security, the Minister for International Affairs, the the Treasury Minister on Taxation, and the Housing Minister. Housing and the high cost of housing remains a key economic issue that we need to resolve. The high cost reduces labour mobility, hinders recruitment, pushes out our young local people and discourages entrepreneurs. As an Assembly, we need to make progress on housing and the cost of housing in the next 4 years. We owe it to the people of Jersey. Whilst I'm talking about housing, I would like to stress that the strategic positioning outlined a few moments ago of encouraging innovation, competitiveness, entrepreneurs, and export-based economy is about creating businesses owned by people living in Jersey and employing people in Jersey. As you know, our tax system is largely based on taxing wages of people here, and it's important that ownership is retained by directors in Jersey so that dividends can be taxed. In general, a business owned by a Jersey resident will pay more tax to Jersey than one owned by a person or corporation outside of the island. Again, we need to encourage ownership to be retained in Jersey. In the coming weeks and months, I expect there will be many actions, decisions, and some propositions that will cause debate, possibly even surprise. What I ask of every member here is to recognise that if we are to deliver meaningful economic growth, if we are able to give our people on the median wage their £7,000 pay increase, we need to change. We need to do things differently, and we need to do it at pace. If we do not change, we cannot expect a different outcome. We cannot expect meaningful economic growth. But we can do this. So let us embrace change together with courage and determination. We can create a brighter future for the people of Jersey.
Thank you, Deputy Voising. We now move to a period of questions. And the first question is from the Conotable of St Martin.
Thank you, sir. Does the candidate think that the current arrangements for the distribution of the 1% for arts adequately support the heritage and cultural sector as a whole, particularly relating to grassroots organisations? I know that it was particularly challenging to secure a grant of £10,000 for the design code for Goree. I'm talking about St Martin, securing that money. And I thank the former minister. Whilst our arm's length organisations receipt of multi-million-pound grants. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And yes, obviously the Opera House does take up a large part of that grant, and it's nice to see that they produced a surplus last year. There are a proliferation of organisations. When I had a briefing with the Chief Officer, I was surprised at the length and breadth of the organisations that we support, and it is something that I will have to get to grips with better.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. So I thank the candidate for his answer. And so would he be open to establishing an arts, heritage and culture working group to allow members across the Assembly to help develop a policy and funding opportunities for the sector? Thank you.
Deputy Voising.
Thank you. And I like the phrase funding opportunities, because that implies that it's not just coming from government. I think that's something that I'd like to discuss with you after the Assembly meeting. I think that's a very good idea also to involve more members of the Assembly in making the decision as to where these funds are placed.
Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. The government has already invested public money to support the return of Bergerac to Jersey, with conditions attached around local economic benefit and apprenticeships. The UK screen industry is worth about £13 billion and continues to grow, and other smaller jurisdictions are starting to see the benefits of more coordinated screening, such as bodies such as Screen Cornwall. Does the Minister believe Jersey is missing a genuine economic opportunity by not having a dedicated screen office or focus, and will he commit to assessing the case for one, whether such funding already should be a catalyst for a wider structured Screen Jersey strategy, for example?
Deputy Voising.
Thank you. Thank you for that question, Deputy Jean. My understanding of Bergerac in particular and other screen productions is that they are often filmed and they go where the funding comes from. So, for example, if we had increased the funding available to the producers of Bergerac, then we would have had more of the series filmed in Jersey. As it was, we weren't able to provide more, so not as much of the filming was done in Jersey. As far as establishing a screen committee or council, I think that I'm certainly able to have a look at that, but I think a lot of that will be based down to funding. And I know that it's been a challenge to find funding for the two Bergerac series that we have funded. So it's going to be a question of where is the money going to come from.
Supplementary?
Yes, so I think more the question is about diversification of the economy and the fact that there is a lot of people on the island who are interested in developing films and TV series and advertisements here on the island, and Bergerac was just one of the examples from outside, but there's a lot of other examples. Focusing in on a Screen Jersey strategy would help understand a bit more what could be happened here to help especially those who want to diversify into this and also advertise Jersey. So I was wondering, especially as the candidate said about potential public-private funding, whether he would look into this more closely to see what it could look like as a potential economic opportunity to grow the economy in this area.
Deputy Voisin.
Thank you. I would definitely look at that if we have an entrepreneur who's able to provide funding and the Economic Development Department are acting as enablers, then that, to me, is an easy win. It may require some short-term funding from government, and in that case, we would have to look at how we could, divert funds from one area to another. But yes, I'm certainly very happy to look at that.
Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. So, in his speech, the candidate spoke a lot about change, but didn't actually talk about what that change would be. I was wondering how he would act to change the fact that Jersey's business community does not reinvest in their businesses at a level that is sufficient for the island's economy. How will he change that?
Deputy Voisin.
I think that some business sectors do reinvest in their business. I know that the financial services sector invests heavily, both in IT and their infrastructure. I think you may be referring, so I think the...
You must speak through the
Deputy,
chair,
yes.
not you, Deputy Morell.
I think Deputy Morell may be referring to the accommodation sector, the hotel sector, and it is true that they have not been investing. And the reason they haven't been investing, sir, is because of decisions made by this Assembly that have severely curtailed their profitability, and there just is not the profit there available to invest. And I think that, so part of the change that I would want to implement is to change those policies that have been inflicted on that sector and encourage them to invest. I mean, if they're making profit, then of course they will want to look after the asset that is being used to generate to operate their business. But if there is no profit there, or if profits are so low, then there won't be the money available to make investments. And also, if profitability is low, then lenders are reluctant to lend to them.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. Sir, my comment or my question comes from comments made by the Chief Economic Advisor on several occasions over the last few years, where the entirety of Jersey's business community, perhaps excluding the financial services sector, does not have a high rate of reinvestment. So there's no one particular sector. And I would ask again, what does the candidate believe is being done at the moment in this area, and what will he do himself to change that fact?
Deputy Voisin.
I think we need to look at the reasons why the investment isn't made. The example I've given is where profitability is low, but if profitability isn't, then is it because businesses in Jersey don't have access to funds? I have heard that there are some businesses that struggle to find banks to lend to them, and that's something that can be looked at. Indeed, there is a suggestion that investors put money into a special fund to lend money to businesses in Jersey, and that's something that I can certainly look at.
Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. The candidate in his opening remarks said that Jersey had seen no real terms increase in earnings. However, there was a report published by, and some members of the Assembly might know this group, the Policy Centre, that showed that in 2025 that real terms increases actually increased by 1.4% for the first time, outstripping inflation. Will the candidate outline his vision to maintain this level of growth?
Deputy Voisin.
Well, I can pass you the Statistics Jersey page, which shows that our average earnings is actually very slightly below where we were in June 2001. And the the action that I've outlined are basically my speech. We've got to work with businesses and industry sectors to allow them to operate their businesses. And the planning department in particular is a hindrance that we need to deal with. For example, I know that there's plans to introduce a new hotel in the centre of town. It would be great if that approval could be granted quickly.
Supplementary, Deputy Coles?
Yes, sir. So the candidate mentions about the barriers to business in his response, and obviously clearly mentions planning. Not every business in this island needs planning permission to develop and maintain the business. Will he therefore outline other barriers which are impeding businesses?
Yes, the fact that businesses have to apply for licenses to employ people. They have to apply for change of use, which again is a planning issue. And there are a number of licenses that need to be applied for, liquor licenses, there are licenses under the financial services regulation. There is a proliferation of these things, and they are actually outlined also in the barriers to business report that was issued by the Department for Economic Development last year, I understand, or was it the year before?
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The candidate rightly highlighted the focus needed on knowledge-based industries and the digital economy. He did mention digital skills. So does he have other plans to specifically support the digital economy, and does he consider the industry faces particular barriers that that growth government can enable?
Deputy Voisin.
I don't really see the digital industry as an industry on its own, because everybody now is using digital technology. I do believe that we need to work with Digital Jersey. I mean, I understand that their funding was cut last year, and there is this important task of retraining large parts of our workforce. And so this is an area where we need to work again and look again. And this is also why I believe that there's some work to be done with Skills Jersey.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. The candidate highlights that digital is prolific and prevalent in all industry, but how will he, in his work, articulate the difference between what he just said there, which is there is digitisation of industries and the areas he mentioned in his opening speech, the high-value export-based knowledge industries?
Deputy Voice.
I think this is where I would hope that entrepreneurs will come forward. I know that we already have a lot of marketing agencies in Jersey that work for businesses outside of the island, and their work obviously is exported via our high-speed telecommunications systems. We also have traders that are working in Jersey for businesses owned elsewhere, and they do their work sometimes in the middle of the night because that's where the markets are, when the markets are open around the world. So it's a question of allowing entrepreneurs to come to the island and actually establish business and find new opportunities. And that's why I think it's so important that we encourage these people to come here.
Deputy Gleave.
Thank you, sir. So over the last year, whilst I've been doing my work and looking at preparing for this assembly, I've met several entrepreneurs, both large and small, who have failed in their attempt to set up businesses. On the small end, it's often due to lack of finance, so I'm encouraged by your comments about looking at solutions around that. But for large network or high net worth entrepreneurs, it's often because they've just failed to get in contact, particularly in government, and not necessarily for states members, but in the civil service. People just aren't getting back to them, and they are encountering roadblocks. So I'm interested to know what the candidate would do to signpost more clearly and remove that as a barrier.
Deputy Voisin.
I think partly it's a question of talking to people. And we do have Jersey Business, which is a great conduit for new ideas and people wanting to start up businesses. And I think that is where a lot of these inquiries go, and that's where they can be captured. And we can also understand what's holding these new businesses and projects back.
Supplementary.
Yes, thank you, sir. So I note that in the Time to Win report, there is the idea of a sandbox, fast-tracking things for the finance industry. Would the candidate potentially consider that for industries, for a separate sandbox type idea to fast-track within potentially Jersey business and make sure they're as specialised for those more high-end entrepreneurs that are approaching Jersey?
Deputy Voisin.
So I think certainly Jersey business can facilitate that, and I believe they do already. And also, Digital Jersey is about taking new ideas and implementing those and allowing people to experiment. So I think that they are already there. But it is really important that we take new ideas and we try them, we test them. It's only by doing that that people know whether they're going to be a success or not. I think the key is that it's got to be at the risk of the entrepreneur. I don't think we can be risking government money in these things.
St Helier.
Thank you, sir. Town businesses, retail, hospitality, the markets are the front line of Ireland's economy and under real pressure. What will candidate do to support St Helier commercial centre specifically, including footfall, al fresco, trading and nighttime economy?
Deputy Voisin.
I think if we want to get back to the buzz that St Helier enjoyed many years ago, sir, we need to turn the clock back to when we had 1 million visitors coming to Jersey, and I'm afraid that's not going to happen. I think what we do need to do is to work with the visitor economy to recover them. And I must say that the people in the visitor economy feel utterly betrayed by some of the decisions made by this Assembly, and there's a big job to be done in rebuilding that trust with them. But it's the way of bringing people to Jersey that are going to fill St Helier. We can also have regular events as well, and I believe that there's an area of my department that does that, and we can work with the Connétable of St Helier. So it's a question of some events, but also we need to rebuild our visitor economy so that people are coming to Jersey regularly, and we get more people here.
Supplementary, Connétable.
Would candidates share any specific views on nighttime economy and al frescos?
Yes, sorry, I forgot to address that part of your question. I do think, sir, and this may be controversial, but I do think we need to look again at the duty that's levied on alcohol. I understand that there's a great deal of evening entertainment has moved to home because alcohol is cheaper if you buy it from the supermarket than drink at home. So that's putting people off coming out in the evening, enjoying a more social environment. And I think that's something that we should perhaps look at in the fullness of time.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. I recently attended an excellent event organised by the IOD called Family Friendly, Profit Friendly, the talent strategy that businesses need. Does the candidate agree with me that preventative health and family friendly policies are economic investments, and will he expand on his thoughts on this area?
Deputy Voisin.
Well, it's all tied up in good employee relations, which I'm all for. There's no doubt about it that if you have a happy cohort of personnel, then they perform well for the business. I think we've also got to remember that people's lives change as we go through life. Our situations change. We have babies, well, some of us do. We have children, and so there are different demands on parents during that time. So the capacity for them to spend more time at work changes as we go through our career, and I think it's good that employers are able to be flexible with that.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. Will he commit to being a champion for this concept then, that family friendly can be profit friendly, and working with other ministers and businesses to enable progress in this area? For example, one request that was made at that event was for businesses to be able to set up things like after school clubs and others, and actually some of it is the regulation that is challenging to allow that to happen. This seems to be an example of something that would fit within the things that the Deputy outlined in his speech.
Deputy Voisin.
Yes, I would be very happy to look at that. After school care is actually very important for parents that sometimes have to leave work early to pick their children up from school. Can I just add also that I do think that we need to look at trying to support parents better when they have children after the first year or so. I think childcare cuts in after the third year, and we need to bring that forward so that parents can get back to work sooner without incurring the massive costs that they do.
I'm going to prioritise members who have not asked a question so far. So the next question, there's only a minute left. Deputy Raimondo, have you got a short question for the candidate?
Thank you, sir. I'll make it quick. Many young people leave the island for university and don't come back because they can't find a job in the sector that they've studied at university. How can we look at, can I ask the Deputy how we can look at growing job opportunities in Jersey in sectors such as tech, biotech and the creative arts?
28 seconds.
I think the answer is yes. And the interesting thing is that the creative skills that we have in Jersey, we need to bring them back. I mean, the Highlands College has a tremendous facility for training and educating media, and we need to give our islanders the opportunity to come back to practice those skills in Jersey.
Thank you. That concludes your 20 minutes. Can I invite you now, please, to leave the chamber, Deputy Voisin? Thank you. And perhaps someone can bring back Deputy Taddeo. Deputy, when you're ready, you can commence your address to members.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I'm never exactly comfortable reading out a pre-prepared speech, even when it is one that I've written. So I'm going to start just with a few opening remarks that I thought about on my way here this morning. It was a few months ago now, well before the election had started. I was at one of these events where you get chatting, you make small talk. And one of the questions from somebody next to me was, well, what do you think is the most important issue facing Jersey? What's the biggest challenge to Jersey at the moment? And I came out with the usual political answers. Well, actually, I think it's probably housing, but certainly the economy as well. And I turned to the other person next to me, who I won't mention his name, but he's well known. And I said, what do you think is the biggest challenge? And he said, I think it's complacency. And it gave me a new way to think of things, rather than we immediately go to identify particular issues in terms of the concrete. But he was looking at the abstract. And that certainly chimed, because in the last few months when I've been speaking to industry leaders in the economy, they say to me that one of the biggest challenges they think we have in Jersey is complacency, but it's also a lack of ambition. And I think there's a concern that actually successive governments have become paralysed, that they've been scared to take bold action. And I think we need to look at that. And the second thing I wanted to say is that people have asked me, why on earth would you want to go for this job? Do you think that you could work with this Council of Ministers? And I look across there and I say, actually, yes, I think I could, because if I take what has been said over the last weeks and months of hustings that I've attended, both locally but also on the senatorials, I heard a lot of positive energy there. I don't see, on further analysis, that the public were necessarily voting ideologically, but I think they were voting because they want to see people with vision and who want to get things done. Now, certainly for my part and for my party's part, we also share that vision, and it was included in our manifesto. And it may well be that sometimes that message didn't come across. But I'm very excited about the possibility of working in one capacity or another with a group of people in this Assembly who also want to get things done, sir. So now to the pre-prepared speech. So first, I would like to thank the electorate of St. Brelade for putting their trust in me and giving me the mandate to serve here in this Assembly for a further term. I would also like to congratulate the new members. I look forward to working with them, sir, and getting to know them. And for those members who don't know me already, I've not always worked in politics. I graduated from university in Sheffield with a degree in modern languages, and before coming into this Assembly at the age of 29, I'd already run my own business. I'd lived and worked abroad in places as far afield as Martinique and La Réunion, and worked in tourism and telecommunication roles in Jersey. And throughout those experiences, sir, one thing has remained constant for me. I've always tried to promote what is good about Jersey and to help build a stronger, more vibrant and diverse island. Why? It's because I want to live here. I want Jersey to be interesting, and I think we all want that for the island. But the economy isn't just about money. It's about people. It's about what makes society generally and our community more specifically tick. And because of this, we must always remember, sir, to put people at the heart of everything we do. Again, why am I standing today to become the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development? Well, there are a number of reasons. Firstly, I believe that Jersey needs a bolder vision for its economy. Secondly, I believe that we should always be thinking about what drives economic growth, not just for the next budget or the next political term, but for future generations. We should not be simply asking ourselves, what's going to happen in 2030? We need to be asking, what kind of island do we want to leave for future generations? What will the island look like in 2080? And finally, sir, I believe in democracy. As in the marketplace, competition is healthy. Members deserve the opportunity to choose between different visions and perhaps different leadership styles before making their decision today. So over the past 2.5 years, I have had the privilege of chairing the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel. I thank my team, who no longer were not the panel anymore, but I'm glad to see that they've made a return to the Assembly. I think there's even one watching in the gallery, if I'm not mistaken. And we were a very busy panel. We produced over 40 comments papers. We took in-depth reviews. We carried out the detailed scrutiny that you would expect of us that tried to facilitate better government decision-making. And I'd like to use that experience and that work ethic now in government. And if elected today, I can assure members that I will be a full-time minister committed to this job. But the role isn't just about administering a department. What we expect from the Minister for Economy, I think, is a champion for the wider economy. As somebody might well say, we've all got to be a champion for Team Jersey. So I want to acknowledge at this point the work of the previous minister. He used to sit here, incidentally, who I believe sought to do exactly that, to support traditional industries and to seek to help to foster innovation. And like me, Deputy Morel is a fluent French speaker, and I hope that we will continue to work together to advocate for closer working relationships with France and our European neighbours in a post-Brexit world. I don't think we can underestimate the importance of that, both from an economic point of view, but from a soft power point of view as well. I'd also like to acknowledge the success of the Better Business Support Package, which was brought forward by Deputy Morel and his team. And what we see there is, I believe, a contract between government and the private sector. And we've seen examples of this in the past where government is prepared to put its hand in its pocket and say, actually, we see that there are issues, there's not enough investment going back into businesses. If you will invest 50% of your own money, then we will do the same for you. That is when businesses respond and it has been an overwhelming success. Another example that we've seen of that was during my time when I was at Culture. I brought the 1% in for arts. I've resisted several attempts to try and get rid of that, but we also see the stimulation and the encouragement that can give to a sector when government is prepared to do its part. So, because we risk running out of time, I want to get to the nub of my vision for Jersey. When I talked about that we need to be bold, one idea that has really captured my imagination, and I don't claim to have conceived of it myself, and this is a good example of the fact that actually good ideas can come from anywhere in society and indeed anywhere in this assembly. It's the idea that we need to very much be concentrating on higher education in the future. I know that there are senators who have just recently been elected for the first time, and others who have also espoused this vision. Why is it such a good idea for Jersey to start investing in becoming what I would like to say is a university town? I think it's got real potential, first of all, because a big barrier to businesses at the moment is the lack of human capital. We know that we have an ageing population. That, on the one hand, is something that we can celebrate. There's a lot of knowledge and wisdom that's contained within that, but we will be needing people to do the jobs. And if you look at university towns throughout the UK, but actually throughout the world, they are centres of vibrancy. Many of our own students from Jersey who traditionally go to UK universities will stay there for a little while. They may even end up living there. That was certainly the case in Sheffield, where a lot of my friends, not necessarily from Jersey, stayed on and they made it their home. But they will come back to Jersey and bring ideas. But what if actually people stayed in Jersey in the first place? What if actually we imported students from other countries, from the UK, from Europe, from Asia, to come and work in Jersey? They would have to do things in the evenings. They would want to be creative. They would also want to do things in the summer. And many of them would actually stay in Jersey, raise the families, and pay the taxes that we need them to do. So it's not just about the economy, it's also about the wider fringe benefits. We should also not be shying away from other areas of the economy, such as renewable energy. I think the wind farm is something we shouldn't shy away from. Ultimately, it will depend on whether it's economically viable, it will depend on access to markets, but it has a huge potential to be an income stream for Jersey and to create jobs and expertise, and it's where everything's going anyway. It will put us in a good place within the region. And the last area, because I can't cover everything today, and I've been reminded, some other members will have received the email, is the huge potential that Jersey could have. It's certainly worth exploring in developing its film industry. There was a paper that was commissioned by Economic Development in the last 2 or 3 years, which was called Screen Jersey. That document's now been parked. They asked somebody to do a research paper into it. They've come back and they've come up with a viability scheme for actually developing the next stage. We've seen the success of Bergerac, sir. So I'll leave those comments there, sir, and I look forward to members' questions.
Thank you, Deputy. We now move on to the period of questions. And the first question is from Deputy Ferry.
Thank you, sir. As I found out in the last government, being a member of a party and being in government can produce tensions. Being a member of the party himself, how would the candidate square those two competing demands?
Thanks, sir. Well, if the member is willing to vote for me, then I'll certainly be able to tell him in a few months' time.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. But can he think of any particular instances where he would have a conflict with party loyalty and government progression?
Deputy.
Look, sir, we're all members of parties. The member who's asked me the question is a member of the Deputy Ferry Party. I'm a member of Reform Jersey. There are others who stand under the quasi-label of Value Jersey, which I hope does one day become a fully fledged party, because I think they've clearly got some support, they've got the numbers, and they just need now to have the transparency. So, look, I think we've all got something to contribute here, and I think what we all get into politics for is to do a job. The people of St Brelard didn't simply elect me because I stood on a Reform Jersey ticket. Many people were not party supporters, but they put their faith in me to do a job. They put their faith in all 49 of us to do a job, and I don't think any of us should shy away from doing that. There will be tensions, but tensions is actually what makes politics really interesting.
Deputy Gleave.
Thank you, sir. So I'm going to ask the same question that I asked to the previous candidate. So through my work and conversations over the last year, I've met several entrepreneurs, both small entrepreneurs who are blocked from obtaining finance, and also larger entrepreneurs. Their issue is different. They often are blocked from conversations with predominantly civil servants, but they are coming across regulation that stops them operating. And this is outside of finance, this is in other industries. So what would the candidate suggest to do to provide better signposting and support for those entrepreneurs?
Thanks, sir. So I think we've got to be clear and have those conversations about what it is that we expect governments to do. So if there are, for example, startups who don't exist yet and have a business idea who can't get private funding from banks, I think there are questions about whether or not government needs to get involved with innovation funds, etc. That we've been stung with those, I think, in the past. But I think that there should be mechanisms whereby, and that's exactly what the Better Business Support Package is, it's about helping businesses. So I think it's, we've got to steer away from government trying to pick winners. I don't think that is something that government could do. But it shouldn't shy away from putting in appropriate investment. And what I meant to answer in my original speech, and I'm glad for the opportunity, is that the areas of return on investment and value for money, if those are the two guiding principles that government has, especially in this department, I think we can't go too far wrong in making sure that where we do give support, that there's a corresponding reinvestment.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, sir. And what about for the large entrepreneurs? So with the Time to Win report, there is a regulatory sandbox that is being looked at. Would the candidate consider that same sort of sandbox idea for businesses that sit outside of finance?
Deputy Taddeo.
Yeah, I mean, the sandboxing or the providing a space where new ideas can be tested, I think is really vital. I think that's something that, for example, I have discussed already with Digital Jersey, and there are, Jersey Business, I think, are also in that space. So I think absolutely we can't simply focus on finance, but what does work for finance sometimes could be modelled and used in other industries.
Conor St Helier.
Thank you, sir. Town businesses, retail, hospitality, markets, and the front line of Ireland's economy are the front line of the island's economy and are under real pressure. What will candidate do to support St Helier Commercial Centre specifically, including footfall, alfresco trading, and nighttime economy?
Thanks, sir. So, yeah, I think St Helier's got great potential. There's already a good foundation there. I think, again, I've been involved in my time in event-led tourism, so I didn't mention it earlier, but I created the Corn Riots Festival, which is now in its 6th year. I am chair of the French Festival, which is a biennial festival which tries to bring vibrancy to St Helier. And I think the more we can do that, I look outside the Royal Square, which used to be called La Place du Marché, so up until the 1800s, and it was very much back then a bustling area which was for the people and of the people. It gradually became more gentrified. And I think if that was a square that existed anywhere in France, we would find that at weekends it would be bustling, there would be al fresco dining, there would be live music that would be performing throughout the summer. And I think if we can capture some of that perhaps European zest, and it's not exclusive to Europe, of course, then St Helier would be a better place. But it is about all of us coming out, enjoying St Helier, spending our money there, and supporting local businesses.
Supplementary?
Thank you. And would the candidate specify what he would do to increase the footfall, practical steps in town, and what his views on the nighttime economy?
Deputy.
Yeah, I think we need more joined-up thinking. I think Jersey's fallen into a habit, it seems, of basically going to work and going home, and the shops generally shut at 5:30. Some things have become a bit too expensive. So first of all, we need to make sure that people have got money in their pockets. I think that's where the partnership between government investment and businesses and paying people enough money so that they can spend it in the economy is really important too. I think it's about, getting into that mindset where there are things to do in the evening. That goes back to the idea of how do we make St Helier vibrancy. it is also vibrant. It's a numbers game. If we had a younger demographic in town supported by a university that was present in St Helier, I think there are a number of things that would add to that footfall.
Conor Thomas and Martin.
Thank you, sir, and I'll ask the same question to both candidates. Does the candidate think that the current arrangements for the distribution of the 1% for the arts adequately support the heritage and cultural sector as a whole, particularly relating to grassroots organisations? And I know that it was particularly challenging to secure a relatively small grant of £10,000 for the design code for Goree, whilst arm's length organisations are in receipt of multi-million-pound grants.
Deputy Tadia.
Yeah, the member who I know is a big supporter for arts and culture in Jersey touches on something very fundamental here. So it's not about just throwing money at the arts. And I think there was an interesting period when the 1% money came in. There was a big uplift. And of course, the majority of that money does go to the 5 arm's length organisations we have in that sector, which includes the recent addition of Ballet de Géry. But there was money that was being kept aside to use for projects in-house. But essentially, I'm quite uneasy with the fact that small projects or potential businesses needed to approach government, and government was the one opining on what and where to give that extra money. So what I think we don't have at the moment is an Arts Council function in Jersey. That used to be with Art House Jersey, and that's what we see in other jurisdictions and in other countries. And I think we probably need to look at that overarching structure of having an art council in Jersey, which can actually give money both to the ALOs, but also distribute it to those who just want to start up either a one-off event or to create a new festival, for example.
Supplementary?
Yes, please, sir. Would the candidate be open, therefore, with his answer, would the candidate be open to establishing an arts, heritage and culture working group to allow members across the Assembly with skills to help to develop policy and funding opportunities for the sector?
Deputy Tadia.
So I'm open to all of those ideas. What I'm not going to do is just suggest that we create new structures, but I'm more interested in what the output of those would be. So whether it's an Arts Council, whether it's a working group in the States Assembly, incidentally, something that we should already be doing and that we can do is having cross-working groups in the Assembly, all-party parliamentary groups, so to speak, which show an interest and can support the work in the economy. I think that's all to be supported.
Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. I would have asked the same questions I asked the previous candidate, but Deputy Gleave has gone there already, so I will have to ask a different question. I was wondering if the candidate would say how would he enable the interface between government and the business community. One of the takeaways I've had from the past 4 years is that government is not actually very good at speaking the same language as the business community, and I was wondering how he would change that.
So I remember saying that I heard Deputy Ozef use about probably 18 years ago now when I was new to the Assembly, saying that you don't have a dog and bark. It seems that we've got lots of dogs in government, but that we'd like to do a lot of the barking ourselves. So I think of organisations like Digital Jersey. I think of other organisations like Business Jersey or Jersey Business. I sometimes get the order wrong. And they're presumably set up to do certain jobs, but government also seems to want to try and do the same jobs in-house. So I think we need to have that conversation of why we're setting up some of these organisations. I mean, we could go on, we could talk about States of Jersey Development Company, Property Holdings, Andium, etc. And I think there is room for rationalisation in that area, but to make sure that somebody's doing the work. So I'm not hung up on whether it's done in-house or out-of-house, I just want things to get done.
Supplementary?
Thank you. It's good to hear that he wants things to get done, and I agree that being out of house is probably better than in-house. Could he explain what he would do then? He mentioned rationalisation. Would he explain what he may do with regard to such rationalisation?
Deputy Tadia.
Well, I think we need to speak to the businesses, find out what works and what doesn't work. So we need to get that feedback. It's not just a case of putting these schemes in place. We need to be asking them, how was your experience in that? And this is something that goes right across government. We need to be customer focused, whether the customer is the individual citizen or whether it's the business user. We need to listen to what works, what doesn't work, and then be willing to change. I think that's all I can say.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The candidate will know from his work on the Economic and International Affairs panel the focus needed on the knowledge-based and digital economy? Does he have plans or a vision to support the digital economy? And does he consider that industry face any particular barriers to growth that government can enable?
Deputy Tadier.
Yes, absolutely, sir. I mean, that was in my original speech, sir. That's the lesson is don't deviate too much from your speech with lengthy preambles. So yeah, it's absolutely correct. The digital economy is vital because it allows for flexibility in working. We all know that people who don't live in Jersey can still work in or for Jersey companies. They can be working on their own. And people can be based in Jersey here working, but actually doing work all across the world. So I think we do have to recognise the fact that we've made the infrastructural investments. Jersey's got excellent fibre still and excellent connectivity. It's also got excellent knowledge base here. And so I think absolutely we do need to look to the future because digital is going to be increasingly important. And I think people even our age, I don't want to look too much at the deputy, he's younger than I am. But you know, it's easy to get left behind if we're not keeping up to date with the latest education and technology.
Supplementary. Deputy Rebendane.
Thank you, sir. The labour market is a critical factor in the operation of most businesses. Does the candidate have a view on how we ensure the island is organised? So whichever business we're talking to, be it construction, hospitality, finance, retail, agriculture, they can access workers whose pay and conditions make them a valuable resource and not an uneconomic luxury. Thank you.
Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. Look, I get where this question is coming from. I do get slightly uneasy when I hear language like accessing workers. We're talking about real people here, so I don't like this idea that there's just a commodity that we import like any other commodity. People traditionally have come to Jersey for generations. My great-grandparents were some of those who came to work in Jersey. So it needs to start with a respectful tone, and I'm not suggesting that wasn't. But the point, I think, underlying point is a correct one. We need systems in place that work both for businesses and for the individuals who want to come in and work here. I've mentioned to other politicians casually that America, for all its faults, is well known for having something called the American dream, and I think we need to have something called the Jersey dream. I've also put in my notes, sir, that the Fort Regent analogy is just one that keeps giving. Fort Regent was built to keep people out, and it's still doing a really good job today. And it's the same with our housing and work law. It was from a time in the 60s and 70s where we wanted to stop people coming from Jersey. We now need people to come here, and we really need to be rolling the red carpet out. Yes, for businesses, but also to young people, to families, to people who've got something to, and say to them, if you do come to Jersey, you can have a job, you can have a good quality of life, and you will be allowed to stay here. We can't simply keep on putting all these restrictions. So if I may, sir, I know I'm probably going over time, the 9-month, I think, restriction on seasonal workers is probably a very good example. It often doesn't work for hotels. It often doesn't work for the individuals themselves. I would look to probably abolish that straight away and let those people stay in Jersey to work here. And there are other things that we also need to do.
Supplementary.
So I wonder what the candidate's stance is on making the living wage also mean the minimum wage.
Deputy Tadier.
So the question is, if the living wage isn't the same as the minimum wage, what should the difference be? I think if we're suggesting that it shouldn't be the case, how low should the minimum wage be allowed to be below the living wage for it to be ethical or even economically viable? So that's the question I would put back to the member, is that I don't see a case for any discrepancy. We need to be working to a point where the living wage is the same as the minimum wage, so everyone can live by earning the minimum wage. And then what we need to do is think about continuing that package, the contract between government. And it was this previous government, in working and listening to all the voices around the table, that recognised, in the same way that I think the car builder Ford did, that unless you pay your workers good wages, they can't afford to live in the society that you live and work in and buy your own products.
Deputy Carpenter.
Thank you, sir. My original question has just been asked, so I'll ask the candidate. What specific ideas does the candidate have around tourism?
So look, I think we've got to be bold. I think we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We've got to recognise that Visit Jersey does a great job. The first thing that I would say is that Visit Jersey has not had its baseline funding increase since its inception in 2015. I think in 2015, the government grant was some £4.6 million, and in 2026 it's still £4.6 million. There is a top-up grant that we give to them, but we seem to like to keep some of our essential ALOs in poverty so that they have to constantly come back cap in hand. So I think the first thing to do is reset that baseline to make sure that Visit Jersey is adequately funded so that they can do their job. I think partly I'm minded to say we should just let them do the job, but I did have a conversation with the chief of Visit Jersey just last week. There are both big things and small things that I think we can do, and if that was the question that maybe the member wants to ask in his supplementary, I'll be happy to answer it.
Supplementary?
No, sir.
Deputy Raimundo.
Yes, thank you, sir. Young people at the moment leave our island in massive numbers, and it's unsustainable. We can't get them back here because we simply don't have the job sector. And when they go to university and get degrees, those degrees can't be used here. How does the Deputy plan to expand job opportunities in the island to suit university degrees?
Deputy Taddeo.
So look, I'm going to be, now that I've been elected, I'm going to give a slightly more open answer, an unpopular answer, is that we shouldn't always be obsessed about getting young people back to Jersey. Some people come, some people go, and that's always been the way in Jersey. 50% of Jersey's population wasn't born here, and sometimes it's good to go away and get ideas, and people do settle all across the world. Living in a small island isn't for everybody. But what I do agree, I think, with the member and where he's coming from is that we shouldn't be forcing anyone out of Jersey because there isn't enough vibrancy, because there aren't enough job opportunities, or because the cost of living here is too high. So we do very much need to take that holistic approach I described earlier to make sure that the Jersey of 30 or 50 years' time is somewhere where people want to live, where they want to bring up families, or they just want to contribute even on their own, sir. And I think the more opportunities we can provide for them to do that in a vibrant economy is more likely to stop people leaving for those reasons.
Supplementary?
Yes, please. We do see increasing amounts of young people leave the island, and often it's not because they want to leave the island, but because they can't survive here. Housing's often blamed for this, and in reality, I actually don't think it's down to housing. I think it's down to job opportunity, and I hear that every time I speak to a young person. So I do believe there's an issue there, and I do ask the Deputy again, which job sectors could we look at bringing in that would suit university degrees?
I don't fully agree with that. I think it depends on the age. I think very young people who maybe in their 18, 20 decide that they want to leave, maybe for job opportunities, but actually the slightly older generation who have done their education come back to Jersey, it is the cost of housing that puts them off because we have a full employment market. There may not be the vibrancy and the diversity of jobs that other places can offer, but it is very much the cost of housing that puts people off. And I notice that's something that indeed Deputy Senator Kirsten very much recognised in her speeches throughout the senatorial hustings, is that young people are leaving the island because of the cost of living, that they can't buy houses here. So I think it's not an either or, but I'm open to following up those discussions with all members.
Thank you, Deputy. That brings that period of questions to an end, and I would invite someone to find Deputy Voisin and bring him back.
Sir, could I raise the defo on Deputy Doublé, please?
Who was content to raise the defo? The defo is raised. Members are invited to return to their seats. The greffier will open the voting in a moment. Any member wishing to vote for Deputy Voisin should press the pour button. Any member wishing to vote for Deputy Tedier should push the contra button. Members may abstain in the usual way if they wish to do so. I ask the greffier to open the voting. If all members have the opportunity of casting their votes, I ask the greffier to close the voting. And the outcome of the vote is 35 votes for Deputy Voisin and 13 for Deputy Tadier. Accordingly, I can announce that Deputy Voisin has been selected for appointment as Minister for Sustainable Economic Development.
So can I congratulate Deputy Voisin and also ask for the 13?
Yes, of course.
Those voting for Deputy Tadier, the Connétables of St Bralard, St Ouen and Grouville, Deputies Tadier, Doublé, Alves, Coles, Catherine Curtis, Baltham, Jeune, Porret, Wilson and Carpenter.
Now move on to selection of the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Senator Farnham, may we have your nomination?
Thank you, sir. I am pleased to nominate Senator Alan McLean for the role of Treasury and Resources Minister.
Thank you. Is the nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Are there any other nominations? Accordingly, I invite Senator McLean to speak for up to 10 minutes, after which there will be a period of questions for up to 20 minutes. Senator.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I begin by thanking the Chief Minister for the confidence he has shown in nominating me for this important office. I'd also like to take this opportunity to commend Senator Miller for the commitment and professionalism she has brought to the role over the last 2 years. For my part, it is a privilege to be considered once again for the office of Treasury Minister. Having previously served in this role, I understand both the responsibility it carries and the importance of the decisions it requires. Treasury is the custodian of Jersey's public finances, but its role is much more than balancing books. Every financial decision affects islanders' lives, families facing cost of living, young people building their futures, businesses creating jobs, and older islanders relying on high-quality public services. I will work with the Chief Minister and ministerial colleagues to keep Jersey financially strong while helping build a more competitive economy, a more affordable island, and a government that delivers better value for islanders. My ambition is not simply to maintain Jersey's financial strength. It is to help restore Jersey's position as one of the best governed, most competitive, and most successful small jurisdictions in the world. That, sir, will only be possible with collaboration with ministers and indeed across this Assembly. Success will not be measured simply by healthier public finances, but by whether Jersey is more affordable, more competitive, and creating greater opportunity by the end of this political term. Strong public finances are not a destination. They are the foundation that allows Jersey to prosper. We begin from a position of strength. Jersey retains a AA- credit rating and a strong balance sheet. But we must not be complacent. Government expenditure has grown faster than government income. We have moved from balanced budgets to operating deficits. Borrowing and debt have increased, and debt servicing costs are projected to reach around £48 million a year by 2028. Budget 2026 continues the recent trend of rising day-to-day spending. That is not a sustainable long-term position to have.
Indeed, the Fiscal Policy Panel has consistently urged us to restore financial discipline, rebuild our reserves, and avoid adding new spending commitments unless corresponding savings are identified elsewhere. We must heed that advice, not because restraint is an objective in itself, but because governments that live within their means have greater freedom to invest in what matters most. Rebuilding our reserves must be a priority. Treasury should not simply be the department that says no. It should be a trusted partner involved early in policy development so financial realities help shape long-term strategy. Where additional investment is required, departments should demonstrate the outcomes they expect to achieve, measure performance, and, where appropriate, benchmark results against comparable jurisdictions. Every additional pound should improve outcomes, not simply increase expenditure. Ultimately, every pound entrusted to government belongs to the people of Jersey. They are entitled to expect value for money. Helping islanders with affordability must remain one of our highest priorities. Treasury cannot solve every aspect of cost of living pressures, but by supporting economic growth, reducing unnecessary costs imposed by government, encouraging competition, and ensuring better value from public spending, it can make a real difference. Economic growth must sit at the heart of government. Without growth, there will be fewer opportunities for young people, less private investment, and increasing pressure on our public finances. Growth is not the responsibility of just one minister. It should be a shared priority across the whole of the Council of Ministers. Our financial services industry remains the backbone of Jersey's economy and will continue to deserve our full support. The Time to Win report provides a practical roadmap for strengthening Jersey's competitiveness. Its principles should be applied to other sectors. Treasury will work with ministerial colleagues and Revenue Jersey to accelerate those recommendations within our responsibilities, improving services to business, modernising tax administration, and ensuring Jersey remains internationally competitive. Islanders will judge us not by the number of reports we publish, but by what we deliver. My immediate priorities are to progress the plans for Budget 2027 and begin work on a new 3-year financial framework for 2028 to 2030. That will be informed by the Fiscal Policy Panel's July report and by a determination to restore sustainable public finances. I will also continue to work to simplify procurement, making it easier for local businesses to compete for government contracts while continuing to secure value for money for taxpayers. Money spent with local businesses supports local jobs, skills, and economic activity. I also want to strengthen Jersey's shareholder role so our state-owned entities remain commercially successful while supporting the island's strategic objectives. When I became Treasury Minister in 2014, Jersey faced a projected structural deficit of £145 million. Working together across government, we introduced the medium-term financial plan, restored discipline to public spending, and returned the public finances to surplus by 2018, while continuing to invest in frontline services and capital projects. Since 2018, the public sector workforce has grown by around 43% compared with around 22% in the private sector. It now represents almost 14% of Jersey's workforce. We need an effective public sector, but we also need a strong private sector because it creates the jobs, investment, and tax revenues that fund our public services. The public sector is now beginning to crowd out the private sector. The balance must be restored. So I commend the Chief Minister for the progress already made in reducing vacant posts and limiting expenditure on external consultants. Those are positive first steps, but more needs to be done. The experience I gained from when I was last in this role reinforced 2 lessons. First, governments achieve more when ministers work together around shared objectives. Second, Strong public finances and economic growth are not competing objectives. They depend upon each other. Strong finances create confidence. Confidence encourages investment. Investment drives growth. Economic growth provides the revenues that fund the excellent public services that islanders rightly expect. Sir, I remain optimistic about Jersey's future. We have exceptional public servants, a resilient business community, a world-class finance industry, talented young people, and strong institutions. Our challenge is not whether Jersey can succeed, it is whether we have the discipline, ambition, and determination to make the decisions that will secure that success. Sir, I will work collaboratively across government. I will support the Chief Minister and ministers. I will put economic growth at the heart of government. I will insist on sound public finances. I will expect accountability for public spending. And I will work every day to leave Jersey financially stronger, economically more competitive, and a more affordable place to live, work, and do business than it is today. Sir, that is the responsibility that I seek. It is the commitment I make to this Assembly, and above all, to the islanders we are all privileged to serve. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. We'll now move to a period of questions, and the first question is from Deputy Andrews.
Thank you very much, sir. Can the candidate confirm whether he agrees with me that the state's grant should be reintroduced in full by the 2028 budget? Thank you, sir.
Senator.
So could the Deputy just clarify the date that he gave? Restored in full by?
The 2028 budget.
I think that, as I understand it, so is going to be stretching it. If that were to be achieved, it would require other responses elsewhere to compensate. At the moment, Treasury is working on the basis of restoring it by 2030. It's something I strongly believe needs to be restored without question. It's just a question of the affordability element. So I think what I would say to the Deputy is I will take away the points he's made. I'm also of a mind to see if we can accelerate, but if we are going to do so, we're going to have to make some changes elsewhere to compensate, as I've mentioned.
Supplementary?
Yes, please, sir. In the recent government budget, between 42 to 45 million of investment income on the reserve is going to be supplementing the Social Security Fund. And I want to know whether the candidate agrees with me that we can procure extensive efficiency savings in the current account to ensure that we can reinstate the state's grant in full by at least 2029 in that case.
Senator.
So I'm wondering how long with the Deputy I can continue negotiating. We've gone from 28 to 29. If we carry on a little longer, I might get him to 30. We are in agreement in principle. I'm very keen that this grant is reinstated. It should be. In fact, I wouldn't have been keen if I'd been in this Assembly previously, sir, to have agreed to it in the first place. But I do have to say that I need to look at the whole picture before committing any further. There are, as the Deputy will be well aware, significant calls on public finances from departments. In fact, I'm sure the Deputy has listened to many members who have been pitching as ministers and who have now been awarded that high office and have all talked about the pressures in their own departments requiring more expenditure. And I'm looking around the room at one or two of them. So there are competing pressures for funding, but I will do my very best, and I will certainly come back to the Deputy with the best deal that we can offer.
Deputy Cleave.
Thank you, sir. So I'd like to raise a point that was already made by Deputy Boysen about alcohol duty. So as I understand it, whilst we have an alcohol drinking problem in Jersey, we do have one of the biggest issues, I understand it, but it has actually fueled this further. It's leading to more people drinking behind closed doors and not monitoring what they're drinking. It's also fueling the rise of a very unhealthy drinking habit of prees where the young drink before they go out because they cannot afford to buy. It's leading, as I understand it from the police, to increased rates of domestic violence behind closed doors. And it's also very badly damaging our hospitality industry, with many businesses in my district, St Helier, suffering with people simply not being able to afford to go there. As this is harming our economy and also causing us costs elsewhere, is this something that the Senator would address?
Senator.
So the Deputy makes some good points. I've heard the term freeloading before, actually, with young people and others, indeed, finding it more cost-effective to do so. The damage to the economy, nighttime economy, and more generally is clear. There is always competitive tension, if I can put it that way, sir, from my previous time in government, not just from a Treasury perspective, because it's not really specifically, and you might find this slightly strange, sir, a case of Treasury looking to raise more revenue from this particular route. There is very heavy lobbying from the Health Department on the argument of public health. And that has been going on for many years. I can see Senator Binet looking slightly bemused. It predated him because I predated him in this assembly. But I will be very happy to look at the matter. It's an important point. There are multiple reasons why we should consider getting the balance right, and I agree with the Deputy Sir that the balance is perhaps not right at the moment, so this is open for further discussion.
Supplementary. Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. How does the Senator plan to address child poverty in Jersey?
Senator.
Well, sir, I think that's a multi-agency response would be required. And indeed, those agencies that are responsible and focused on that important issue need to have proper funding. I haven't looked in detail at that at this particular point, but I think it's important that there is coordinated approach to dealing with it. It's not always just about funding and money, though, I have to say. It's about getting the right response and a coordinated response. So my answer to the Deputy is that I think the multi-agency approach would be the way to go, and I'd be interested to know what funding pressures there are, and we could see what we can do about it within the constraints that I've already alluded to earlier.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. And the candidate mentioned economic growth, and the Treasury Minister is in a unique position were Jersey to experience improved economic growth to ensure that that is distributed equitably amongst our society. How does the Senator plan to do that?
Senator.
So I plan to do that in a collaborative way with colleagues on the Council of Ministers. We will look where the pressures are, and we will make sure that we distribute funds accordingly to the areas of greatest pressure. I'm sure the area that the Deputy is concerned about and referring to is an area of pressure. We need to make sure we get that balance right.
Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. The candidate will know that one of the roles of Treasury is to recover debts owed to the Treasury. One of the main debts that's still outstanding is ITIS and Social Security contributions taken from employees' wages. What is the candidate for Minister going to do to recover these debts?
Senator.
Yes, sir. The department is very conscious about these debts, as I'm sure the Deputy is aware. Indeed, these principally arose over the COVID period, and at that particular point, they may well have increased since then, but they started in the COVID period, and there was an approach to have a light touch in terms of recovery. As far as Treasury is concerned, they are now moving to recover debts that are in arrears, and will continue to move to get that money recovered as quickly as possible.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. Has the candidate considered whether or not to impose contract restrictions on any debtors who also serve as government contracts to ensure that no further contracts are issued to anybody from government or ALOs if they owe the Treasury money?
Senator.
Sir, if that's a suggestion from the Deputy, I think it's an excellent suggestion that needs consideration. There will possibly be legal connotations to such matters, but subject to getting appropriate advice, that should be part of a consideration that I would certainly think about. It's the legal implications that will be the biggest barrier to such a suggestion, though, I suspect.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The candidate outlined the significant financial challenges the government will have to overcome, and it's widely recognised that digital transformation is one of the few options to reduce long-term costs while improving services. So what are his plans for funding digital investment while in departments, and does he believe government needs a clear direction on digital change and improvement to fulfil the ambitions he outlined?
Senator.
With the last question first, yes. The funding is important to get that right. And in fact, it's an interesting point because in terms of right-sizing the organisation, if I can put it that way, the need for and the benefits from digitalisation are fairly clear. I would call it an invest to save programme, perhaps something that we've done previously when I was in this role in 2014. We put a programme in place which included just that. And it was able to move funds from other departments that were overspending or not as efficient as they should have been into the pressure areas such as education at the time and health. Funnily enough, same pressures still seem to exist. So it is an important area, and I think we can do a lot to be more efficient within government if we utilise technology in the appropriate way, and departments need to be making sure that they focus on that.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad the candidate used the phrase invest to save. I actually left it out in case it was too contentious, and it's a positive direction. The candidate may be aware that one challenge that's held back more widespread digital innovation is that typically departments seek funding for their individual projects with only limited funding on core capability. So will he be looking at how digital is funded, and in particular whether more digital investment should be centralised to ensure the right capabilities are delivered across government at the right time?
Senator.
I'm not always a fan of centralisation. We see it with large organisations in the private sector as much as anything else, who centralise, then decentralise and go through continuous cycles. The movement is also quite costly, so one has to be careful about that. I think what we've got to focus on is outcomes. So we've got to see what the best possible way to structure and make sure that various departments are operating in a way that is going to be most cost effective, but most importantly, most effective in delivering better quality, lower cost services.
Deputy Leck.
Thank you. COVID taught many in the financial services industry that home working was possible. Home now for many working in this industry is Mauritius, Philippines, Singapore. The same firms are now increasingly foreign-owned by private equity firms. How does the Senator propose to tackle the consequent loss of income to the Treasury from these firms?
Senator.
One of the areas that is absolutely key, and it's been mentioned several times in this Assembly this week, and indeed extensively over the election process, was the Time to Win report, which has been produced at some considerable cost. And what it seeks to do is to make our financial services industry more competitive here in Jersey, because I'm afraid we've slipped behind. We need to recall that back in the 1970s, there were, I recall, about 70 international finance centres. The current total is running into several hundred. The competition is stiff. Other places are performing much better than us. They're much quicker. The costs are lower, more cost competitive, and therefore we need to make sure that we raise our game, reduce the barriers, and sustain our finance industry, which is crucial to the economy. It is the biggest contributor, as the Deputy will be well aware. There is more we need to do to focus on what's happening with private equity, which he mentioned. There have been a number of businesses sold within Jersey to private equity. And then what tends to happen then, of course, is that not only the revenues go offshore, ultimately they get sold in a 3 to 7 year period, and perhaps we lose all of that tax revenue as such. So we need to look much more closely on the relationship with private equity and the acquisition of businesses in Jersey. But the key is underpinning our existing financial services sector and making sure we deliver fast on the Time to Win report.
Supplementary?
No, thank you.
Deputy Feltham.
Thank you, sir. The Senator has mentioned the pressures, the financial pressures on ministers and departments. I want to speak specifically about the pressures on health. Does the Senator accept that health spending pressures cannot be solved by a Treasury discipline alone, and that an unrealistically tight health budget simply moves the cost elsewhere into waiting lists, staff burnout, delayed care, family pressure, and ultimately poorer outcomes?
Senator.
Well, sir, we don't want any of those, do we? So we need to make certain that we address the issue. Health has been spending. My colleague, Senator Binet here, has been doing a sterling job in difficult circumstances that he alluded to in his speech yesterday. I'm pleased to say that the team in health is now stabilising the financial situation. There is currently not a forecast overspend in 2026. As far as I'm aware, I hope that position hasn't changed. Good to see the... It just goes to prove, sir, that a briefing from only a few days ago can be already out of date. But we have to work closely with health to make sure that key frontline services are delivered. So the Deputy was concerned, I think, essentially about the cutting back of frontline services. That is not on the agenda. Indeed, back in 2014 and beyond, when we had to save 145 million, frontline services were invested in. They weren't cut. So we need to find a way to make sure that that is maintained. That doesn't mean efficiencies can't be driven in health. I will be talking to Senator Binet about opportunities for ensuring that duplication and bureaucracy and middle roles that perhaps are more of an administrative nature can be managed in a way that is more cost effective.
Parliamentary.
Yes, if the health minister did say to the senator that he could not safely deliver within its that health could not safely deliver within its current funding limits, would the senator's first instinct be to provide additional funding, increase charges, reduce services, use reserves, borrow, or raise additional revenue?
Well, sir, the Deputy has actually just listed my entire thought process. I would think of all of it and consider what was the best and most appropriate in the circumstances. So I do recall, and I keep talking about 2014 because it was quite an interesting time when at that point we had a structural deficit to deal with. Back in those days, we had to work out how we were going to fund the pressures in health, which were much the same, without causing any particular difficulties. And we managed to do that quite effectively. And indeed, at that time, and the Deputy might be aware, there was talk about a health charge being introduced. But what we focused on doing as well in parallel with making sure departments were more efficient and made savings and such like, we put a big focus on driving economic growth. And it was successful. We never needed to go at that point into the areas of possible charges for health because we grew the economy and the revenue came in. And that's exactly what we have to do again. And that's why I was so delighted, sir, to hear Deputy Voisin, our Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, talking so passionately about what he's planning to do. It will take teamwork. We need to grow the economy, bring in the revenues, and that will help to offset. That was one of the points I don't think the Deputy mentioned, but it is nevertheless, really important.
Conatava Trinity.
Thank you, sir. The Senator mentioned that he will look at government procurement and that he wishes to encourage local supplies. This is an area that has been of great concern to me, and I just wondered if the Senator could please elaborate what he intends to do to improve our procurement processes. Thank you, sir.
Senator.
Yes, sir. Well, what I've actually done straight away, before I've even taken up the post, so that was a little bit ahead of the game, and I hope members don't think it a little presumptuous. But, sir, I've gone and appointed Deputy Parker as an Assistant Minister with a specific focus on procurement. He's an expert in that area, or he's very shortly going to become an expert in that area. It's something that we feel strongly about. There has been some work, to be fair to my predecessor, Senator Miller. I know some work has been done with regard to procurement to improve the situation, to try to simplify the processes, which are unbelievably laborious and have been, 70-page documents. It definitely disadvantages small and medium-sized businesses in Jersey. which is not an acceptable position, particularly with the pressures that we're feeling at the moment. So this is why we want to really get tucked into procurement to make sure that it works. It ties in with the early discussions about economic growth. We need to support our local businesses in Jersey. It's absolutely crucial for tax revenues and jobs and general prosperity.
Supplementary. Conor St Mary.
Thank you, sir. In his address, the candidate referred to the shareholder role of the Treasury Minister. Obviously, the various ALOs were set up to enable a certain amount of commercial freedom within them, but does he consider that either within the MOUs or other documents, he is in a position to exert sufficient financial leverage on such matters as recruitment and loans?
Senator.
So the Constable referred to ALOs. I think it's state-owned entities. In fact, he was probably referring to. Yeah. So it's the state-owned entities, sir. There are MOUs with those various organisations, and that is the mechanism that which get reviewed every 3 years. I need to double check, sir. I think the next review is due in about 18 months' time, but I will refer to the department to just double check on that. But regardless, we do need to have conversations to make sure that they are acting in our best interests and taking the strategic objectives of the island into consideration, because that's a key factor as far as I'm concerned, and I think probably at the heart of what the Constable was talking about.
Supplementary, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. I think the candidate for his reply, and this, I did indeed mean state-owned entities. 3 of those state-owned entities own property, and in addition, the states through Jersey Property Holdings has other assets. Does he consider he has a specific role in ensuring that there is some form of joined up thinking and oversight over those companies or those entities in administering the state's portfolio of properties?
You've got 2 seconds, Senator.
Yes is the answer to the question, sir. I absolutely do. And I'll take it outside the Assembly and with the Constable, because I've got more to say on the subject.
Well, I can announce that Senator McLean has been appointed as Minister for Treasury and Resources. In accordance with Article 19(7) of the States of Jersey law, all ministers have now been appointed, and therefore Senator Farnham is formally appointed as Chief Minister. Congratulations, Chief Minister.
Sir, may I be permitted to say a very few words?
Yes, very few words. Yes.
Sir, may I just thank members for the confidence they have shown today in allowing the new government to be formed, and for the constructive spirit in which the process has been conducted. In making the nomination, sir, for ministers, which has not been easy given the strength of this new Assembly, I have sought to form a government that reflects its breadth, skills, views and experience. And whilst I would like to congratulate my fellow ministerial colleagues, I would remind members this is a moment of responsibility, sir, not of a celebration. The electorate have placed their trust in this Assembly to to deliver, and they will judge us not by our words today, but by the difference we make to their lives over the next 4 years. Families are facing cost of living pressures, the young people hoping for an affordable home, the patients waiting for care, the businesses looking for confidence, and the communities are depending on strong public services, sir. Islanders expect delivery now, not distraction. They expect us to work together where we can, to disagree respectfully where it is necessary, but always to put Jersey first, sir. In closing, may I thank members for placing their trust in me once again. It is a great honour to serve this island as Chief Minister, and I will do all I can, sir, to lead a government that is stable, effective and focused on getting the job done. Thank you all very much.
Chief Minister. Now, slightly curiously, under Standing Order 117A, after selection of ministers, I must invite members to decide whether or not you wish to adjourn immediately and continue later today or tomorrow morning. I presume members wish to continue, but of course, I must invite members to...
I intend to, after further consultation with now elected ministers to discuss the assistant ministerial position, which, once that is published, might be helpful to some members in deciding what
Well,
other
if you want to make a proposition that the Assembly adjourns now and continues at a later time today, then you must make that proposition so members can consider it.
No, sir. I will speak. I'll allow the process to continue and speak to members. Communicate with members over the next 30 minutes, sir, and
yes,
and confirm the assistant minister as soon as possible.
If no one makes the proposition that the Assembly adjourns, we now move on to consider the chair of the Privileges and Procedures Committee. Are members content to proceed? In that case, that's what we shall do. In accordance with Standing Order 118, the Assembly is due to appoint a new chair of the Privileges and Procedures Committee. I invite members to make nominations for chair of that committee. Are there any nominations? Conataba of St Martin.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I would like to nominate Deputy Karina Alves for chair. Am I allowed to say a few words? Nomination?
No, I don't think so, no.
Okay, right.
I should have stopped the practice that crept in early on today. But I thought it would be unkind in the circumstances, but I don't think it's really permitted. Thank you very much. Is the nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Are there any other nominations? Accordingly, Deputy Alves, I invite you to speak for up to 10 minutes, after which there will be a period of questions for up to 20 minutes. Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. And I'd like to thank the Constable of St Martin's for proposing me as she was previous chair. So since being elected in 2018, I have had the pleasure of serving on the Privileges and Procedures Committee in a number of roles, as an ordinary member, as vice chair, and as chair in 2021 before the 2022 election. During that time, I've worked on a wide range of projects, from electoral reform to improving member support, governance and procedures. And one of my proudest achievements, establishing and securing the Political Awareness and Education Subcommittee. PPC plays a unique and essential role in this Assembly. It's not about policy or political positions, it's about how we function as a legislature, our procedures, our standards, our conduct and the support we provide to members. It is the backbone of how we operate as a democratic institution and underpins everything that we do. And because of that, sir, it requires a chair who is collaborative, fair and able to work across all parts of the Assembly. Political awareness and education remain an area I am deeply passionate about. I was born and raised here in Jersey, and like many islanders, I learned very little about our political system growing up. Politics simply wasn't a part of everyday conversation. However, I was fortunate to have a mother who has an interest in politics, a Portuguese woman who came to the island in the late 1970s, who had lived through an authoritarian rule in Portugal until the Carnation Revolution in 1974. From her, I learned from a young age the importance of democracy, participation, making sure that people's voices are heard, and of never taking our freedoms for granted. Later, when I became a teacher, I realised how little had changed, and that is what drove me to establish the Political Awareness and Education Subcommittee. For me, this was not just about short-term engagement. It was about creating lasting change, and that is why ensuring that this work was embedded structurally and continues beyond any one individual or political term has been so important. So in the last election, I was encouraged to see an increase in voter turnout numbers and the continued development of initiatives from Vote.je and the digital and public engagement team in the GREF. But there is still more to do. As chair, I will continue to prioritise engagement throughout the entire term, not just elections, ensuring that all islanders understand how our system works and feel confident taking part in it. A large piece of work last term was the overhaul of the Code of Conduct for elected members, which was updated following a comprehensive review by the committee. The now rules-based system is much more accessible and allows both the public and members a clearer understanding of the basic expectations required of us and the sort of behaviours we should be demonstrating. I'd like to thank members for their engagement with this review last term, and I remain committed to ensuring this updated framework is fit for purpose going forward and continues to focus on modernising behavioural rules and restoring public trust. Another significant piece of work which I accompanied behind the scenes over the last 2 terms was the implementation of the automatic voter registration system. This has been a long and complex project requiring coordination across government, the parishes, the judicial greffe and the state's greffe. Like any project of this scale, there were challenges along the way and it took longer than initially anticipated. But its successful implementation is a major step forward in modernising our electoral system, improving accessibility and reducing barriers to participation. And I'd like to particularly acknowledge and thank the committee for their support in this. It has been invaluable and I hope to be able to continue working constructively with them. Our elections are a significant logistical undertaking, and this was a collective effort. It shows what can be achieved when we work collaboratively and effectively together across the public sector. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank everyone involved in the election, particularly parish staff and volunteers, as well as colleagues across the judicial greffe, states greffe and government, for the work undertaken both in the lead up to the election and on polling day itself. The legacy report from the outgoing committee highlights the breadth of work undertaken over the past 4 years and sets out important areas for continued focus. This includes reviewing the composition and procedures of the Assembly, our election legislation and bringing forward a full root and branch review of standing orders. It also highlights quieter but equally important work, such as refining the process for personal statements and reviewing systems like the e-petitions following public feedback. These may not always attract attention, but they are fundamental to how we operate. They're fundamental to how we conduct debate, how we hold each other to account, and how accessible and transparent we are as an assembly. As chair, I will ensure that this work continues, taking a balanced approach between reform and stability, always with the aim of improving how we function as a parliament and clarity in our rules and procedures. Alongside procedural work, I am a strong advocate for improving the support available to states members. Members of this assembly work incredibly hard, often dealing with complex constituency issues alongside their responsibilities here in the states. Over recent years, we've seen many improvements in the resources available through the state's greffe, and I'd like to place on record my thanks to their continued support. But there is always more that can be done. If elected, I have 2 main points I'd like to focus on in this area. The first, professional development opportunities. This is something I remain committed to personally and institutionally. Through my experience, including the CPA Election Observer Programme and the Professional Development Certificate in Parliamentary Governance from the McGill University, I have developed a good understanding of international best practice and the importance of benchmarking ourselves internationally. This is not just about comparison for its own sake. It is about ensuring that our processes, our elections and our procedures maintain the highest standards and continue to earn public trust. The second is placing greater focus on member well-being and peer support. This includes more structured, regular training throughout the term, not just at the beginning, and opportunities for team building across the Assembly. We do not always agree politically, and nor should we, but we must be able to work together effectively and respectively. Another area I believe requires continued focus is member conduct and the understanding and application of our standing orders. PPC has a responsibility not only to develop the rules, but to ensure they are understood, respected and upheld. This includes upholding the Nolan principles of public life: selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty and leadership, which must underpin everything we do, ensuring that we meet all the standards expected by us and by the public. Clarity in our rules supports better debate, better decision-making, and ultimately better outcomes for the public. Throughout my time in this Assembly, I have demonstrated my ability to work across different roles with a wide range of members and on complex and at times contentious issues. Whether it's been electoral reform, voter registration, or procedural change, I've always sought to listen carefully, work collaboratively, and find practical solutions that command broad support. Importantly, I have shown that I can work constructively on issues where I may not personally agree with every detail, focusing instead on delivering what the Assembly has asked for in a fair and balanced way. PPC must continue to be a committee that reflects the Assembly and brings people together. It must support members, uphold standards, improve governance, and ensure that legislature continues to evolve in a way that serves the public. As chair, I would ensure that inclusive representation across the committee is maintained, open and constructive working relationships, and a clear focus on outcomes that benefit the Assembly and the island as a whole. Ultimately, the work of PPC is not just about internal processes. It is about ensuring that we can do our jobs effectively on behalf of the public that we serve. In closing, sir, serving on PPC has been one of the most rewarding parts of my time in this Assembly. It sits at the heart of our democratic system, shaping how we operate, how we represent, and how we are held to account. I believe I've shown that I am approachable, adaptable, and determined, and that I can work with colleagues across this Assembly regardless of political differences. I will continue to prioritise political awareness, member support, strong governance, and continuous improvement in our procedures. Above all, I will work to bring this Assembly together to ensure that regardless of our politics, we function effectively as a Parliament and serve the people of Jersey to the very best of our ability. It would be a privilege to serve as Chair of PPC. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Alves. We now move to a period of questions, and the first question is from Deputy Morell. Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. It is my understanding that the scrutiny chairs and panels do not hold their own budgets, and whilst that would be a question ordinarily for scrutiny, I think it is actually for PPC as well, because PPC creates that liaison with the state's GREF. Would the candidate, for want of a better word, would the candidate please explain her views on how the budgets for scrutiny panels should be administered?
Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. I think over the years we've actually seen quite a significant growth in the budgets to ensure that states members are able to do their job properly and that scrutiny is able to, where needed, employ the expertise to be able to do in-depth reviews. I think as long as there is a sound business case and that we can justify and explain exactly where funds need to go and what we need in order to make sure scrutiny and PPC and the state's GREF in general are well budgeted. I'm supportive of ensuring that the financial resources are there available. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Thank you. Does the candidate not think that it would be wiser that each scrutiny chair should have an allocated amount and it is their choice, putting the politicians in charge of their budgets rather than administrators?
Deputy Alves.
Thank you. I think the Deputy raises a good point, and I think that's probably something that's worth exploring. Personally, I remember when we didn't have constituency support, for example, and having visited some other jurisdictions where in constituencies the representatives are given their own budget and their own pot of money to do as they please to support their constituency. I found that quite unusual and a little bit shocked actually that we didn't have that same kind of setup. So I think that's the kind of thing that the Deputy is kind of suggesting should probably happen with scrutiny panels, when there's a bit more freedom with what the chair and the panel can do with their budget. I'm not opposed to that at all. I would like to probably have a look at how it's done in other jurisdictions, so that if we do that, there are the right safeguards in place to make sure that it's not abused, because in some other jurisdictions where I have seen these constituency budget pots, I have sometimes maybe been shocked by some of the practices that they've applied.
Deputy Ferry.
Thank you, sir. And can I congratulate the candidate for her nomination? She was a great vice chair on PPC, and we worked together as ACMs and always found her to be very fair and thorough in all her dealings. She mentioned in her speech a review of standing orders and went into a little bit of detail. I wonder if she could just flesh out what are the main issues that she would like to see resolved or changed on standing orders, sir.
Deputy Alves.
Thank you. So the CPA have published their preliminary statement, and on there was a suggestion that they would be looking at standing orders. I'm not an expert in that area, but I do know that from conversations with the election observers, there was a comment that there had been numerous amendments, and that often that made it quite difficult to understand standing orders and where the different amendments fitted in. In the last term as ACM, I brought forward legislation to regulations to simplify the language in our legislation. I think that's probably the way we should be going. We should be trying to modernise our language as much as possible and just making it as easy to understand as and accessible, not just for us, but also for the public, because the standing orders is a public document as well. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, sir. In the last Assembly, we had a course on negotiating for better results in politics. Would the candidate like to see a similar course in the next Assembly?
Somebody else?
Yes, sir, is the short answer. I was really privileged to be able to undertake that qualification with McGill University on parliamentary governance. Unfortunately, CPA have now pulled that qualification, so it's no longer available. It was, and I know there was a number of other members here, I think Constable St Helier also was on that course with me. So yeah, I would be really, I think anything that enables us as members to have something that we can present as continued professional development when and if we leave the Assembly is vital. Thank you.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. One of the thorny issues that PPC tried to deal with in this last term, but perhaps we didn't quite get there, was remote participation. What are the Deputy's views on that? Would she intend to bring a proposition back to the Assembly to try to get a settled permanent solution for that?
Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, we are in a bit of a difficult position at the moment where some things were changed and other things weren't. It is part of the legacy report to revisit that that element of our standing orders on remote participation. I can give you my personal view. Obviously, this may not be reflective of the committee, as I don't have a committee at the moment. I would like to see something that would enable people, for example, to remote participate in circumstances where they may be off island, but it's for valid reasons. So I think I have given the example of where my grandmother was dying of mouth cancer, and I was having to come back and forth in between the sittings. My family are not local, they don't, my immediate family live here, but my wider family don't. And that was a very difficult time for me. And financially, that was quite difficult as well, because I was having to come back and forth in between sittings, and the flights to Madeira are not cheap. So I think once the committee is constituted, obviously I need to hear from everybody's views and build a consensus going forward, but my personal view is that. Thank you.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir, thank you. Does the Deputy agree with me that it is important that we do have a very clear and settled position on that going forward, so that all members and the public as well know where we all stand? And will she's made a commitment to take it to the committee, will it be one of the first priorities for the committee?
Nobody else?
I mean, it's part of the legacy report. I don't want to commit to making everything a priority, because otherwise nothing gets done. But I do think it was something that we did come back and forth on. And I think as we evolve, and obviously, we need to take into account people's disabilities and people's family setups. It's really important that we, as an Assembly, are as inclusive as possible, and we make it possible for people to do their jobs as easily as they can, and without any ambiguity, I think, as well, because like the Deputy said, the public need to be clear on what our rules are as well as we do. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Would the candidate slash chair be willing to continue to support the diversity forum's work, and in particular the work that body is doing around accessibility for members, but also for the public?
Yes, sir, absolutely. And in my first term, the Deputy was the chair of the Diversity Forum, and I know that she spearheaded it, and I'm really pleased that it is now in standing orders as well, so it is a standing committee. So short answer is yes, absolutely. I have, over the years, seen what assemblies look like in other jurisdictions, and I am often blown away by how accessible and how educational they are as well. So I think obviously being in this building presents its challenges, not just for us as members, but also for the public. So yes, absolutely, I am completely behind the Diversity Forum. Thank you.
Supplementary? Senator Gorst.
Thank you, sir. This is the time of the parliamentary term when members generally feel frustrated with the Troy rule. 49 members have been elected to serve the island. We also have a petition about the review of government, and yet it's the very time when everybody just wants to get on with the work. I wonder if the chair could articulate what her views are about reform of government, maybe looking at the Isle of Man system, because otherwise it just becomes a perennial issue of frustration. Thank you.
Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. Well, we do have the Machinery of Government subcommittee, whose remit is to look into more detail around that. Personally, my own personal view, I wasn't here for the committee system, so I don't know the pros and cons to both. I do think the Troy rule is quite important, actually, because I think in a set up where we don't have party politics, I think it's important to be able to convince those that are not in government that what government are doing are the right thing. So I wouldn't want to see the Troy rule disappear, personally. If that is if members are not in agreement with that, then as I said in my speech, I am but the chair and the vehicle to presenting ideas, and I don't always present things that I am supportive of. But that is my position on the Troy rule. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. Grateful for the Chair's explanation. Of course, it's often presented as a choice between the current ministerial system or the previous committee system, but I think there are systems, particularly if we look at the Isle of Man, that almost act as a hybrid. I wonder if she would put that to the subcommittee for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. At this stage, I'm happy to consider anything, and I think this is probably would be best placed with the Machinery of Government to do a piece of work on to look at other jurisdictions and see if there's something that maybe we could adapt that could work here. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Tadier.
Thanks, sir. I think it follows on from the spirit of Senator Gorst's question. Does the prospective chair believe that there is sufficient understanding both in the Assembly and in the wider public about the separation of powers between government and this Assembly? And I can give one example that perhaps doesn't help with clarity for members, is that we all have .gov.je emails, but we're not all members of government. We also all have access to vast public databases of who the public officers are and civil servants are, which is probably a breach of data protection, which I have also raised with the GREF staff. Is that something which needs to be regularised in the view of the candidate?
Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. I think this probably comes under a wider piece of work about raising political awareness and education, because I understand the deputy's frustrations and the lack of understanding that there is often between what is Assembly business, what is government business, and how they interact. With regards to the emails, I haven't really considered that or thought about that specifically. I think it is important that we have a standardised email address so that it's easy enough for people to know where we can be contacted. Whether that should be that we should all have at States Assembly instead of at gov.je, I don't know. I do see positives in having access to the government contacts list. I know on many occasions I may have been given a name by a minister, but I don't necessarily know, or I don't know their surname, or I'm not sure what they do within the department. And so having access to that is useful to us as members. And ultimately, I think the public expect that as well. Many times I deal with constituents who are quite shocked and surprised that I don't have access to systems that they assume that I do, like the social security system, for example. Even as a government minister or an assistant minister, I have to get an authority to disclose from my constituents to ensure that I can access any information. So I think there's a balance to be struck, but I think the wider issue for me is actually doing that education with the public so that they realise that actually we are members of Parliament before we are members of government, and that is the priority, and that we are still even going through a process of electing our government, because that's something even post-election people have been asking me to do this or to do that or to find this information. And I've had to say to them, well, hold on a minute, we still don't have our ministers in place. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
So I can definitely see it's a positive to have access. I just question whether it's ethically correct. So will the Chair give an assurance that she won't accept answers that involve inertia, or this is the way we've always done things when it comes to changing some of our internal processes, which simply do not stack up to scrutiny when it comes to the arguments for actually doing things more in line with the principles she described in her learning from McGill or in the Nolan principles?
Deputy Alves.
So I think I have a track record of pushing for positive, practical solutions that aren't always traditional. However, like I've stated before, you know, I am simply the chair, and if there isn't the appetite, or if members choose to ignore what is often evidence-based, better approaches to doing things, then I have to go with the will of the Assembly. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at where things move forward, will the Chair of PPC be looking into the dress code that's involved, especially looking at how it's reflected as kind of gender-specific dress is currently the scheme? No, speaking to other members previously, we currently have no issues with perhaps the dress code and how it's interpreted, but perhaps it's one proactively to be looked at, and I'd rather ask it here than take more Assembly time later.
Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. And yes, absolutely. I've often considered coming in a shirt and tie myself to be sympathetic to my male counterparts. Yeah, I think it's something, again, that's within standing orders. So when we do a full review of it, I think that will probably be an area that we will be looking at to tweak and modernise, hopefully. Thank you.
Supplementary. Any more questions for Deputy Alves? Yes, Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. We will shortly, I think, be receiving reports on the election from the CPA observers and I imagine the Jersey Election Authority. Can the prospective chair give an assurance that she will take very seriously the recommendations that might arise out of those, in particular as to how, whether there are gaps in our electoral law that might have been exposed during this election, and what she will do to make good on recommendations and to bring those forward?
Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I mentioned in my opening speech that I've often had to deal with contentious issues, and in fact in my first term in 2018, following the election observers report then, we went through, I joined a subcommittee, probably a bit naively, on electoral reform, because I saw it as a mathematical problem that needed solving, being a mathematician, and went in with my spreadsheets and got what I thought was the perfect mathematical balance. Obviously, when that was communicated to the public, it was very different, because people have got very different views on our composition and have, you know, and obviously tradition plays a part in it as well. So I think I have always tried my hardest to implement recommendations, you know, ensure that they are taken seriously. But again, as I keep coming back to, I am at the will of the Assembly, but I will also always push through anything that I see is best practice and best for the public of Jersey. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Yes, just one point. My recollection is that the CPA observer mission to this recent election was only decided at the very last minute by the Assembly. Does the candidate nominee think that it would be a good idea to maintain the practice of CPA missions for future elections?
Deputy Alves.
Yes, sir, absolutely. However, there is obviously a budget that needs to come with that, because it does cost us. Initially, we had decided not to have the CPA election observers this time, because we thought there was going to be no change, or very little change, or just the automatic voter registration. But obviously, with the last-minute introduction of the senators, this changed the view of the committee, and so we decided to bring back the CPA observers. But I personally am very supportive of having them at every single election, But there is obviously a cost that goes with that, and we need to agree that as a committee and as an assembly. Thank you, sir.
Any more questions? Yes, Dr.
So it's not been mentioned yet in this section, but when the debates were happening previously, the term gerrymandering was used quite a lot. Is it the Chair's view that now we have a gerrymandered system, we simply have to get used to it? Or actually can the voters in the urban areas and the residents in the urban areas of Jersey expect some element of fairness in future electoral systems?
Deputy Ells.
Thank you, sir. Well, this is obviously an area that's very close to my heart, and like I mentioned in 2018, I did obviously look at what I thought was a perfect mathematical system, not necessarily the perfect system for the people of Jersey or how they felt about it. I think ultimately this Assembly made a commitment, not in the last term, I think it was the previous term, that any reforms would be based on equity and fairness. And so I stand by those things. I also stand by international best practices. However, it's not something I will be necessarily pushing for. I think we need to wait to hear from the CPA Observer's report and see what their recommendations are, and also the JEA. But ultimately, I support equality in everything that we do and fairness. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
No, so I think we're at time anyway.
Oh, we are. Thank you, Deputy. Accordingly, I can confirm that Deputy Alls has been appointed as Chair of the Privileges and Procedures Committee. Now move on to Chair of the Public Accounts Committee. I invite nominations for that role. Conatable St Helier.
Thank you, sir. And I would like to nominate Deputy Karen Wilson.
Thank you. Is that nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? I invite Deputy Wilson to speak for up to 10 minutes, which will be followed by up to 20 minutes of questions. Deputy Wilson. Do you want to put your microphone on, please?
I thought my voice was loud enough. I'd repeat. I'd like to thank the Conatable St Helier for nominating me to serve as Chair of the Public Accounts Committee. Her track record as PAC Chair in the last term is both impressive and widely respected across this Assembly. Having worked closely alongside her as Assistant Vice Chair, I do not underestimate the responsibility of building on that legacy, nor that of other respected scrutineers who have shaped this committee. During that time, I saw firsthand what rigorous, constructive scrutiny under effective leadership can achieve. I've also learned a lot from the amount of scrutiny work I did in other areas of policy, gaining a deeper understanding of the public system we are all part of. I believe this experience, along with the track record in governance, risk management and investigation responsibilities in my professional life, has equipped me with the skills needed to chair the panel, and I'm ready to do so now. If elected, I will build on that strong foundation and lead a PAC that is disciplined, evidence-driven and focused on results. One that delivers better government by pursuing a clearer objective, which is to ensure public money is used economically, efficiently and effectively with stronger accountability for outcomes. So we are operating in a period of increasing demand on public services and finite public resources. In the midst of a cost of living crisis, the need for sharp, focused scrutiny of public spending has never been greater. Even where finances are sound and processes compliant, that is not enough. Every pound, whether invested in major capital programmes such as healthcare facilities, school modernisation and critical infrastructure, or directed toward cost of living support, must deliver measurable outcomes and real visible value for islanders. Members will be familiar with the work of the Controller and Auditor General, with whom PAC has a close working relationship. Year after year, the CAG highlights recurring issues: weaknesses in programme delivery, a lack of clear performance measures, inconsistent follow-through on recommendations, and too often insufficient demonstration of value for money. The role of PAC is not simply to note these findings, but to drive accountability from them. That means ensuring recommendations are implemented, not just accepted and parked, requiring accounting officers to explain not only how money was spent, but what was achieved, and tracking performance across departments where failures are systemic, not isolated. The CAG has repeatedly stated very clearly, Jersey does not have a financial reporting problem, it has a delivery problem. Too often, the link between spending and outcomes is weak, delayed, or simply not demonstrated. We are good at accepting recommendations, but less good at implementing them. Some remain open years after being made, others are marked complete without fully addressing the underlying risk. This is not a criticism of intent, it is a challenge as to whether government has embedded the discipline, ownership and follow-through required to deliver change. So what will I bring to the role as Chair of PAC? Well, my approach is simple, practical and focused on outcomes. First, with regard to delivery and productivity, PAC must move beyond reviewing reports and become relentless in following up what happens next. Where recommendations are accepted, the evidence provided must demonstrate meaningful change within clear and measurable timeframes. So I will introduce and propose a system of public tracking for CNAG recommendations, with named accountable officers, clear deadlines and regular recall hearings. Where issues remain unresolved, after 2 or 3 years, we will ask why, and we will keep asking until progress is demonstrated. This means ensuring that recommendations are fully implemented and evidenced. Reporting is clear, consistent and meaningful. Governance and assurance frameworks are applied consistently across departments. Second, I want to strengthen accountability. Government has acknowledged through the Fiscal Policy Panel the need to restore fiscal balance and improve value for money. PAC must ensure that these commitments are delivered in practice. Many of the challenges identified by the CNAG cut across departments. Siloed working, undermining efficiency, weakens value for money, and increases pressure on public finances. So under my leadership, we will test cross-government coherence, scrutinise shared outcomes, and hold clear lines of accountability for delivery. We will examine areas such as departmental strategic reviews, where progress has been limited, and treat them as missed opportunities for identifying efficiencies. We will track performance across service lines, test collaboration in practice, and expose where fragmentation is undermining outcomes. Thirdly, on value for money, compliance alone does not deliver value. The central question must always be, what did islanders get for the money spent? So under my leadership, PAC will consistently test whether programmes are achieving their intended outcomes, whether they represent value for money, and whether there is credible evidence to support those claims. We will scrutinise prioritisation, long-term planning, and alignment between resources and objectives. The real risk identified by the CNAG is not that we do not know what needs fixing, but that we do not fix it quickly enough. Closing that gap is essential to maintaining public confidence. And PAC is the Assembly's principal mechanism for holding the executive to account for delivery. People expect public money to be spent lawfully, wisely, and effectively, and to deliver the outcomes it was intended to achieve. When it does not, they expect the Assembly to act, and PAC is central to that trust. So if I'm elected today, I will chair a committee that is evidence-led, grounded in audit and data, persistent and returning to issues until improvement is demonstrated, focused, prioritising areas of greatest financial and public impact, and independent, meaning clear distance from the executive. And above all, one that operates in the service of the public. In terms of priorities, the committee's work will address the recommendations from the Legacy Report and focus where the financial and public impact is greatest. emergency preparedness and critical infrastructure resilience, cost of living pressures and the effectiveness of support, health spending, including the new healthcare facilities programme and sustainable funding, technology and digital investment, high cost, high risk, an area that requires strong governance, and capital expenditure, including scrutiny of the proposed Jersey Capital Investment Fund and its interaction with existing financial controls. Across all of these, I will ensure a clear focus on programme management, procurement, financial discipline and productivity is maintained, and this is conducted in the spirit of openness and transparency and with respect. So there have been different approaches to PAC leadership over time, some more collaborative, others more focused on performance and delivery. The most effective committees, however, have been clear in purpose, confident in their authority and unafraid to challenge where public money is not delivering results. At a time when every pound matters, that is the approach this Assembly needs. If elected, I will bring members together into a capable and committed committee, united by a common purpose, which is to ensure better outcomes and better value for islanders. That is the approach I offer, grounded in integrity, objectivity, and a clear focus on delivery, and I ask members for their support.
Thank you, Deputy Wilson. We now move to a period of questions. Are there any questions for Deputy Wilson? Deputy Feltham.
Thank you, sir. The Public Accounts Committee looks at slightly different things to scrutiny panels in that it looks at how things have been implemented. How would the Deputy look to work with scrutiny chairs to ensure that scrutiny and PAC works effectively together?
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Well, one of the common areas of work will be around the common strategic policy and to look at how and in what ways each of the various scrutiny panels will be delivering on their own objectives and their own priorities. I think the test for PAC's contribution in that is to test whether or not the outcomes are being delivered and to make sure that there is a cross-governmental approach to accounting for that delivery.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. I was pleased to hear the Deputy reference the tracking of recommendations and actions on that. Would she be open to working with within SLC with the chairs of other scrutiny panels to combine perhaps that tracker so that scrutiny panels could look when they're scrutinising how things are planned to be done, whether that matches up with recommendations that have been made by the PAC?
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. I think that's going to be essential because in terms of delivering successful outcomes, we know that each of the scrutiny panels will be connecting with other scrutiny panels, and clearly ministers will be connecting with other ministers around delivery. So I think the notion of having a tracker that's transparent and that people can actually see the progress that is being made will help both ministers as well as scrutiny panels.
Deputy Parker.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to ask the Deputy as to how she feels that the PAC has any teeth to actually enforce accountability. From my experience, having worked on PAC many years ago, we seem to make the same mistakes and not learn from them time and time again. And I think a lot of it is we seem to recommend various sort of ways in which things could be improved, but there seems to be a complete lack of real teeth and actually bringing about, sort of consequences for action not being taken. And what do you feel about that? Sorry, thank you.
Well, through the chair next time, Deputy Parker, it's best to face me, and Deputy Wilson, not you. Yes, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. I welcome Deputy Parker's view on that, and indeed have experienced some of that myself in terms of the various committees that I've sat on. You heard in my speech that I mentioned the notion of respect for the work of PAC and for the work of scrutiny. And I do think we have got some way to go in helping ministerial teams and officers through the work that we do. And the way to do that is by bringing the evidence and the transparency in a non-confrontational way, but acting as a critical friend to be able to show and demonstrate where improvement can be made. And I think one of the things that you will have heard me say there is that strengthening the accountability, in my view, is when we are constantly on it. And the process of recall, I've not seen the process of recall particularly used in my experience over the last 4 years. But I think on behalf of the public, we should not just rely on a scrutiny meeting that happens every quarter or every 6 months. I think we need to step up our approach to improving accountability through that particular mechanism.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. Yes, it brings to mind patient records, which was an area I looked at when I was on public accounts. And it appears when we ended up putting in another system, we ended up exactly the same problems. We didn't learn from our experience at the previous time. And I asked the candidate again, really, is does she feel that actually there should be, the actual public accounts committee should have more teeth than just recommending change? Thank you.
Dr. Wilson.
Thank you, sir. I think this is a really interesting area to explore because, in principle, I agree, yes, I don't believe that the mechanisms that are within the current arrangements for PAC are strong enough. I don't think that we have the strongest accountability framework that we should have, but I don't think that that is entirely in the remit of just the Public Accounts Committee. I think there are also ministerial responsibilities about how they work with their civil servants and they articulate their requirements, and that civil servants in turn can actually present back to the ministers what is possible and what is deliverable. And I think all of that debate and that discussion about outcomes and about the accountability that goes with delivering outcomes is how and in what way we can explore and we can test that at PAC, and we do need to find ways of actually strengthening that.
Any more questions for Deputy Wilson? If there are no further questions, then I can confirm that Deputy Wilson has been appointed as Chair of the Public Accounts Committee. Now, we now move on to the 5 elections for Chair of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panels. I remind members in relation to these 5 appointments, ministers and assistant ministers are not eligible for appointments to these positions of chair. For each panel, the relevant minister only, not the assistant minister, is prevented from either nominating a candidate or taking part in the vote, if there is a vote, and the corresponding members for each panel are set out in the consolidated order paper for today. So, for example, in relation to corporate services, neither the Chief Minister nor the Minister for Treasury and Resources can nominate or vote, and so on, as set out. All ministers are nevertheless able to take part in the questioning of each candidate. So the first panel is the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel.
Sir, could I...
Deputy Joan.
I would like to just put it on record that at the moment we still do not know who the assistant ministers are for this bit of section, though I don't know if there will be any means to be able to vote, but I just wanted to put it on record that we still do not know the list, so therefore it would only be the ministers.
Yes, only the ministers who are prevented from voting, but ministers and assistant ministers are not eligible for appointment to these positions of chair. So we move on to the chair of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel. and I invite members to make nominations for the chair of this panel. Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. As Vice Chair of the outgoing panel, I'm very pleased to propose Deputy Lindsay Feltham.
Thank you. Is that nomination seconded?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for chair of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel? No. In that case, I invite Deputy Feltham to speak for up to 10 minutes, after which we will face up to 20 minutes of questions. Deputy Feltham.
Thank you, sir. I would like to thank Deputy Stevenson for proposing me, and I also acknowledge the work of the outgoing panel and the legacy report it has left for the next assembly, or this assembly, I should say. I want to set out why I am standing for this position, why this remit matters to me, and how I would approach the role. The panel scrutinises matters arising from the work of the Chief Minister and the Minister for Treasury and Resources. That gives it two broad areas of responsibility. The first is Treasury, the budget, taxation, public spending, long-term financial planning, reserves, capital projects, and the way public money is raised and used. The second is the corporate centre of government, the machinery of government, procurement, digital systems, people and employment matters, and the systems that sit behind delivery across departments. It also means scrutinising legislation within that remit and helping to give the Assembly assurance that the detail has been properly tested before decisions are made. That remit matters to me because I have seen it from different sides of this Assembly. How decisions made at the centre of government affect whether policy can actually be delivered. A budget line, a savings target, a staffing decision, an IT system, a procurement process, or a piece of legislation can determine whether an islander receives the service or support that this Assembly intended. For me, corporate services is not just about figures on a spreadsheet. It is about whether government is being honest about the choices it is making, whether public money is being used well, whether policies are deliverable, and whether the impact on islanders is clear. I bring relevant experience to this role. I have chaired the Public Accounts Committee, and that has given me a strong grounding in looking at how decisions are implemented in practice. PAC work often means looking back at what the government said it would do, how it was delivered, whether risks were properly understood, whether money was used well, and whether the outcomes matched the original intention. That is very valuable work, but is often retrospective. Corporate services gives me the opportunity to apply that same discipline earlier in the process, before decisions are made and before implementation begins. It can ask whether the assumptions are sound, whether the funding is realistic, whether the risks have been identified, whether the delivery plan is credible, and whether ministers have been clear with this Assembly and with islanders about the choices being made. PAC taught me to look at what happened after decisions were made. Corporate services gives me the opportunity to apply that discipline before decisions are made. That same approach is important when scrutinising legislation. Legislation can have the right intention, but still fail if the detail is not right. The Assembly is often asked to make decisions on complex legislation in limited time. A good scrutiny review can get into the definitions, commencement dates, financial consequences, and practical effect, so that this Assembly can have greater confidence that what is being asked to approve will actually work. Scrutiny can identify where amendments may be needed, test whether the policy intention is matched by the legal drafting, and look at whether the people affected have properly been heard. I have also worked as a minister. I have been on the receiving end of scrutiny, and I value proper scrutiny when it is constructive and evidence-led and fair. As a minister, I have had to bring forward proposals, make funding bids, work within financial constraints, and explain the practical impact of decisions. I know that the budget affects whether services can be delivered and whether government can follow through on the commitments it makes. The outgoing panel's legacy report shows the breadth of work undertaken over the last term, including government plans and budgets, public hearings with the Chief Minister and the Minister for Treasury and Resources, taxation, long-term financial planning, public sector spending, and issues across the corporate centre of government. I would want to build on that work. The next panel will need to maintain a clear focus on 4 areas within its remit. First, the budget, public spending, and long-term financial planning. The panel will need to look at revenue and expenditure, reserves and funds, capital spending, and the assumptions behind the numbers. Scrutiny should not assume that one political answer is right before the evidence has been tested. Colleagues will come to questions of spending, savings, and reform from different political perspectives, and that is entirely right and legitimate. The role of the panel should be to test whether proposals are clear, evidenced, and deliverable. Where government proposes savings or reform, it should ask what problem is being solved, what evidence supports the approach, whether the impact has been understood, and how the Assembly will know whether the change has worked. Second, taxation and financial policy. Tax proposals need to be scrutinised, not only by asking how much revenue they raise, but by looking at who is affected, how the change will be administered, and whether the legislation properly reflects the policy intention. Third, the corporate centre of government. That means procurement, digital, people and employment matters, public sector reform, performance reporting, and the machinery of government itself. Good policy can fail if the systems behind it do not work. Poor procurement wastes money. Poor digital delivery makes services harder to access. Poor workplace culture means staff leave, services suffer, and problems are hidden rather than resolved. Weak performance information means ministers and the Assembly cannot properly judge whether policy is working. Fourth, legislation within the panel's remit. That may include taxation legislation, public finance legislation, employment or people-related matters, digital or data issues, and legislation affecting the machinery of government. The Assembly should be able to rely on scrutiny who have looked carefully at whether the policy is clear, whether the drafting works, whether the implications are understood, and whether those affected have had proper opportunity to be heard. I want to be clear about the style of scrutiny I would seek to lead. I do not see the role of a scrutiny chair as simply opposing government. Scrutiny should be prepared to challenge ministers, but it should also be prepared to listen, follow the evidence and make recommendations that can be realistically improve decision-making. I would want the panel to work constructively with ministers, officers, stakeholders and other colleagues. But constructive does not mean passive. It means being clear, prepared and persistent. It means asking questions that need to be asked, following up when answers are not sufficient, and making sure recommendations do not disappear into a report and then quietly get forgotten. I would also want the panel to be accessible across the Assembly. If colleagues have concerns about spending, delivery, procurement, staffing, digital systems, legislation, taxation, or transparency, I would want them to feel able to raise those concerns with the panel. I'm standing for this role because the issues within this panel's remit matter to me. They matter because this Assembly has a responsibility to look beyond slogans and test the detail. If elected, I would want the panel to be known for doing the detailed work within its remit, testing budgets, scrutinising taxation and financial proposals, questioning delivery plans, examining the machinery of government, scrutinising legislation, and giving the Assembly the assurance it needs before major decisions are made. I would work with panel colleagues to set a focused work programme, build on the outgoing panel's legacy report, and ensure that corporate services plays its full part in holding government to account over the next term. And I hope I can count on the Assembly's support.
Thank you, Deputy Feltham. Are there any questions for the Deputy? Deputy Chair.
Thank you. As there were none, thinking of my feet, I think a really important role that I saw the corporate services was the role of coordinating scrutiny around the budget. And I think there are some lessons learned about that. I think we've heard in the elections, I heard definitely from constituents that scrutinising very big budget levels means that it's really hard to understand the detail and understand what the direction of travel will be for the government, and sometimes movements between budget lines is hard to see with that. I was wondering if there was any, from your work in scrutiny before and then as a minister, there are any things to see changes in how we would be scrutinising the budget going forward.
Deputy Feltham.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for her question, because it gives me the opportunity to say that I know that for a scrutiny chair of corporate services and other scrutiny members, when we go into summer recess, this certainly isn't a summer off, because you go very quickly into the role of scrutinising things like the Common Strategic Policy and the budget. I agree with the Deputy. Sometimes it is very difficult to get into the detail. I'm reminded right now of my former colleague, Deputy Rob Ward's proposition that he brought to the States around financial reporting, meeting, I think it was COFOG standards, so that they could be benchmarked against international best practice and placed within certain areas. I think things like that help. I think, again, and I'll allude to the question I asked the chair of the PAC, I think scrutiny working together with PAC to look at where things haven't worked in the past and actually spot possible issues before they arise through scrutiny work is really important, and I would look forward to working with the chair of PAC and other scrutiny chairs really closely in that respect.
Supplementary?
Yes, and I thank the Deputy for her answer. And I was wondering if she felt that there was a need, for example, for additional resources to be able to bring in for scrutiny as a whole, and with corporate services being overall coordinators around the budget, to bring in external expertise to really do that number crunching and really understand what is behind that numbers. I felt sometimes that were pushed back a little bit to have that external expertise, and I think I was wondering what her opinion is on that.
Deputy Feltham.
I think external expertise is very often important to scrutiny panels. It's important to get objective, impartial advice. I remember now the question, I think, from Deputy Tadia to the chair of the PPC. I think it is an important thing that the Scrutiny Liaison Committee do look at the budgets available to it and make representations to PPC and the government as appropriate.
Are there any other questions for Deputy Feltham? If there are no further questions, then I confirm that Deputy Feltham has been appointed as chair of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel. I'll move on to the appointment of a new chair of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel. I invite members to make nominations for the chair of that panel. Conataba St Helier.
Thank you, sir. And I would like to nominate Deputy Samantha Gleave, please.
So I missed the name?
Deputy Gleave.
Deputy Gleave. Is the nomination seconded? Yes. Are there any other nominations? There are no nominations. I invite Deputy Gleave to speak for up to 10 minutes, after which we'll face up to 20 minutes of questions. Deputy Gleave.
Thank you, sir. Members, I'm standing for the chair of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel because I believe this is one of the most important scrutiny roles in the Assembly at this moment. Jersey's economy is not an abstract subject. It is the foundation beneath almost everything else we want to do. It funds public services, it supports jobs, it shapes the cost of living, it affects whether young people can see a future here, and it determines whether future assemblies have real choices or only difficult trade-offs. If the economy is strong, Jersey has options. If it weakens, those options narrow very quickly, and that is why this panel matters. I also want to acknowledge the work and importance of the outgoing panel. Its legacy report shows the scale of this role and the substantial volume of work across a very wide brief. There is important work there for the next panel to consider, particularly around connectivity, the cost of living, barriers to business, the visitor economy, cyber resilience, international development, and of course, delivery of time to win. But I would approach that legacy with focus. The next panel cannot do everything at once. It will need to prioritise where scrutiny can add the most value, where there is the greatest economic risk, and where ministers most need constructive challenge and support. Financial services remain the engine of Jersey's prosperity. They support high-value employment, fund a significant part of public services, strengthen our international standing, and give Jersey a role in the world far beyond our size. We should be proud of that. But the Time to Win report is clear. Jersey's financial and related professional services sector remains strong, but the competitive environment has changed. Other jurisdictions have not just caught up, they have overtaken us on speed, certainty, digitalisation, and customer experience. The report does not call for lower standards or deregulation. It calls for sharper execution, clearer accountability, reduced friction, and a renewed appetite for growth. I strongly support that direction. I also want to be clear. Scrutiny should not slow down what has already been identified as urgent. The role of this panel should not be to put Time to Win through yet another layer of delay. It should be to help ensure it is delivered. That means asking questions whether actions are clear, timetables are realistic, responsibilities are understood, progress is measured, and government, the regulator, and industry remain aligned behind delivery. A report, however good, does not strengthen the economy on its own. Delivery does. But the lesson from Time to Win should not stop with finance. Jersey has decided financial services needs renewed focus. We've identified the barriers and are taking action. That same seriousness now needs to be applied to the wider economy. That does not mean pretending every sector is the same as finance. They are not. But the principle is transferable. Jersey cannot afford to take businesses for granted. The days when it was simply a privilege to do business here are over. If we want businesses to come here, stay here, invest here, and grow here, Jersey has to work harder. We need to create an environment where entrepreneurs feel nurtured, and that means the one-person business taking a step into the unknown, the small firm trying to grow, and the successful entrepreneur who has already proved themselves and is deciding where to invest next. Those people have choices, and at the moment, too often, Jersey is turning opportunities away, and that should concern us. We need to be braver. Jersey used to be nimble. We used to understand that one of the advantages of being small was the ability to move quickly, make decisions, and create solutions that larger jurisdictions could not. We need to recover that confidence. That starts by being honest about red tape. On the doorstep, people asked me what I meant by unnecessary red tape. One example I often gave was the requirement for a sole trader business licence. It's not required in the same way in Guernsey, the Isle of Man, or the UK, yet Jersey still requires most businesses to obtain one before they can trade. On its own, removing that one requirement would not transform the economy, but it's symbolic of a wider problem. Too often we start from control rather than support. And to be clear, I'm not talking about removing the protections we need for workers or islanders. Good regulation matters, standards matter, reputation matters. But there is a difference between protecting people and making it unnecessarily difficult for someone to start, invest, employ, or grow. Much of the heart of Jersey's economy lies in St Helier South. The offices, shops, hotels, restaurants, professional firms, waterfront businesses are in the district I represent. If St Helier works, Jersey works. If town is vibrant, commercially active, attractive, and connected, the whole island benefits. If businesses in town are struggling with cost, complexity, recruitment, or uncertainty, that is not only a local issue, it is an economic issue for Jersey. We also need to be honest about how growth is achieved. We cannot spend our way out of every problem, we cannot tax our way to prosperity, and we cannot regulate our way into growth. The sustainable answer is to grow the economy, improve productivity, reduce unnecessary friction, support investment, and create the conditions in which businesses can innovate, employ, take risks, and create value. That is where constructive scrutiny can add real value. I do not see scrutiny as opposition. I see it as one of the ways this Assembly helps government make better decisions. Good scrutiny should not seek to trip ministers up. and it should not become a brake on delivery, but nor should it be passive. Its job is to test the evidence, test the assumptions, identify risks early, and ask whether a policy will work in the real world. With time to win, that means supporting pace while checking delivery. With wider economic development, it means asking whether ministers are removing barriers to growth and listening to business. With external relations, it means asking whether Jersey's international reputation and market access are being actively strengthened. With international development, it means ensuring Jersey's work overseas is effective, well-governed, and reflects well on the island. And across all of this, it means keeping a clear focus on outcomes. Artificial intelligence adds urgency to this debate. It should not dominate every economic discussion, but it should sharpen our thinking. Jersey's tax base is heavily supported by high-value finance and professional roles, and those are among the types of work most exposed to AI-driven change. We need to prepare. AI can help Jersey become more productive, it can help businesses become more efficient, it can help government reduce duplication and improve services. But it also means we cannot afford economic drift. We need growth, productivity, skills, and resilience before future pressures become a crisis. So why me? For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jersey born, I went to JCG, and I was lucky enough to study at Oxford. And while the JEP rightly calls me a former advertising professional, I was only in that for 5 years. I left that industry in 1995 because I realized there was no point in marketing something that was broken and not fit for purpose. So for the last 30 years, I've been a management consultant, a business strategist. I fix products that are broken, I fix services that are broken, and I help businesses turn around. My professional background is in strategy, analysis, and delivery. I have spent much of my career helping organizations understand complex problems, gather evidence, listen to different perspectives, test assumptions, and turn that work into practical recommendations. I have a great relationship with my clients, but they have not paid me to agree with them and to always hear what they want to hear. They pay me to test assumptions, to look at evidence, and sometimes to tell them hard truths when they need to hear it. That is what support looks like, and that is literally what I do for a living. Good scrutiny is not about having the loudest opinion in the room. It is about asking the right questions, building the evidence, identifying delivery risks, and helping the Assembly understand whether policy will work in practice. This is the approach I would bring as chair. Constructive but not passive, fair to ministers but rigorous on delivery, open to business, workers, consumers, and expert advice and evidence, focused on outcomes, not just process. For me, the economic challenge of this term is clear. Jersey must protect and strengthen financial services. We must deliver time to win. We must apply a growth mindset to the wider economy. We must nurture entrepreneurs. We must become braver and more nimble. We must reduce unnecessary red tape. We must back businesses that create jobs and opportunity. This is why this role matters, and this is why I'd be honoured to chair the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Gleave. Are there any questions for Deputy Gleave? If there are no questions, then I can announce that Deputy Gleave has been appointed as Chair of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel. And we'll move on to a new Chair of the Children, Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel. I invite members to make nominations for the Chair of that panel. Deputy Rebendane.
Sir, I'd like to... Thank you. I would like to propose Deputy Victoria Lee for the position.
Thank you. Is that nomination seconded?
Yes.
Are there any other nominations for Chair of that panel? There are no other nominations. Then I invite Deputy Lee to address the Assembly for up to 10 minutes, after which there'll be up to 20 minutes of questions. Deputy Lee.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to start with a line from Confucius. The wise are not confused. The benevolent are not anxious. The brave are not afraid. I once read that as a description of leadership. I have come to read it as the description of scrutiny. Not confused, seeing the system as it really is. Understand the challenge in depth so we can tear real progress from the appearance of it. Not anxious, because scrutiny's purpose is to serve a child, a family, an islander who will never see the hearing. At the end of the day, what matters is that we did our most careful work for this island. Not afraid to put the hard questions to a powerful department and to ask it again when the first recommendation was not taken up. That is the chair I am asking you to let me be. Sir, over the last 4 years, this panel met more than 260 times. It produced 5 substantial reports, hundreds of findings and recommendations. It held 60 public hearings, and it lodged 8 amendments to this assembly. That work was done by a panel of states members who listened. And may I congratulate Deputy Catherine Curtis and Senator Helen Myers on their new roles. That continuity is the point. The outgoing panel called itself a constructive and critical friend to the government, and agree with that. Hard on the evidence, fair to the ministers. And I'm asking to keep that relationship going and to pick up the work that it could not finish. Sir, let me tell you what I will be watching for through one single lens. Last year, close to 700 babies were born in Jersey, the fewest on record. Every one of them begins a journey this government has a duty to hold, helping their parents feed them and keep them well, not missing a milestone, finding the nursery place their families fight to afford, the school that is right for them, the SCND support that is still too inconsistent, the funding that is still unequal, the language help a multilingual child needs, the pathway that carries them into work until one day they become parents themselves, and that cycle begins again. And at every stage, that child needs 3 things from us, in this order: to be kept safe, to be cared for, and to be taught. Kept safe, that is justice and home affairs, a home free of violence, an online world that is no longer a danger, and when our safety net fails a child, a system that redirects them rather than discards them. Cared for, children and families. Taught, education. 3 ministers, 1 journey. And we already know where it leaks because this panel's own work has shown us. On education, this panel reviewed secondary education funding. It reviewed lifelong learning. And on that review, a number of its recommendations were rejected. So the panel wrote to the minister in April this year, asking them to rethink again, concerned that its recommendation has been misunderstood and that stakeholders' own evidence has not been fully reflected. I will be that member who sees it answered. I will watch the childcare promise. Real money has been committed to nursery places for 2 and 3 years old, but it runs on a model where parents pay up front and reclaim later. And the panel's own conclusion was that it remains unclear whether access has actually widened. Funding commitment is not the same as a child in a place. That gap will always be a scrutiny question. And I will watch the new 4-partnership leadership model now on a 2-year trial, born of the very demographic decline those birth figures described, and ask the question that matters. Is this real change for children and young people, or is this a reorganization of the top? On children and families, the funding going into the Children's Services Improvement Programme and the Home Estate is large. But the question is never the figure. It is whether the service reaches the child it was voted for, and whether safeguarding is strong enough to let our most vulnerable children not just survive, but thrive. I will ask that question every quarter. This panel's landmark review asks what protects Jersey's children from online harm, and made 63 findings. I will hold the government to account. And I will press for foster care recruitment to be restored to where our children need it to be. On justice and home affairs, in March, this Assembly passed 5 laws to better protect women and girls on stalking, domestic abuse, sexual offences, public order, and strangulation. This panel supported everyone, but the funding to make those laws real across the justice system was not yet resolved. This panel also secured funding through its own amendment for community police officers and digital forensics. And I will hold the new youth justice roadmap to its word, because the child who did not get enough attention and support from our safety net too often arrives there. Prevention rather than intervention. I intend to be watching that whole journey. So, how I would chair: evidence first. Hearings that bring into the room the people with a real lived experience and those who helped this community thrive. Education psychologists, foster carers, SEND parents, young people, the campaigners this panel has always listened to. A panel built across this assembly with open and timely access to information. And the judgment formed over years of deciding whether effort actually changes a child's life. To choose which questions this panel asks first. Practical, with discipline and depth. Not confused, not anxious, not afraid. For every child on that long journey, and for every islander who trusted us to watch the money and the promises both. And lastly, I want to thank the people of St. Helier North who placed their trust in me. They sent me to do the work and to hold this government to account on the things that shape their daily lives, their children's schoolings, their safety, and their families. Chairing this panel is how I intend to honor that trust. My fellow members, if that is the work that you came here to do, please join me on this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Lee. Are there any questions for Deputy Lee? Deputy Morrell.
Thank you, sir. And I congratulate the candidate on her successful candidature. But I wanted to ask, yesterday I asked the prospective Education Minister about special educational needs and reports that I had received about a kind of vindictive attitude potentially in the education department towards people who complain about the level of special educational needs. Would the chair, or soon-to-be chair, please explain the approach that scrutiny would take to determining whether there is validity to these claims or not?
Deputy Lee.
Thank you, sir. Our SND is in crisis, and we don't need to repeat that. When we did our review in 2025, we have 2,095 children registered as they need the record of needs. That is the document that helped the teacher, helped the parents, help the education psychologists to understand what needs there are for those children. It doesn't mean that they have the needs. And if we imagine those 2,095 children standing on the Royal Square, we're not fighting for a huge number. We're fighting for the rights for that many children. And I really want to work with the new appointed education minister to really look at that, how we can support every single child and every single family with their needs, and start from there and collaborate with Home Affairs as well to understand where we are with those numbers. And we can, if only when we understand what exactly the needs and the records of needs, and then we can understand how we can support them one by one. Thank you.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. It was in a hustings during the election. I was being asked about these subjects, and it came across to me that perhaps there is a need to look at the culture within the education department. And I was wondering, what would the scrutiny chair, like her panel, to do with how would they approach the issue of understanding the culture in the education department, whether it needs to be changed or improved in some way?
Deputy Lee.
Critical friends. I think that's the message that I want to pass through. I think scrutiny attacks will always get ignored, and scrutiny flatters is useless. So I would think that I would support the good work and challenge that the work has not been delivered. And that's the culture that I'm going to bring. Thank you.
Any more questions for Deputy Lee? If there are no further questions, then I can announce that Deputy Lee has been appointed as chair of the Children, Education, Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel. I note the time is
propose the adjournment.
Adjournment proposed. Members content to adjourn now? Assembly stands adjourned until 2:50.